All right, well, we've got everybody here. We'll go ahead and start this evening's meeting with an invocation, which we'll observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Bajan.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodings.
Here.
All present.
Thanks. Next up, we have request for approval of the minutes of the work session and evening meeting of March 9th.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the work session and regular meetings on March 9th.
Second.
A motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajan.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Next up, we have special business. We have two reappointments to the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee, with Jill Giese and David Jorgensen for 4-year terms that would end March 2025.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the approval of the appointment of Jill Giese to the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee for a 4-year term ending March of 2025.
We can do Jill and David together if you'd like.
I ask unanimous consent for the approval of the appointment of David Jorgensen to the Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee for a 4-year term also ending March of 2025.
Without objection? It sounds as though Jill and David might not be here. I would like to thank you both for the service that you've already provided the city of Boise, but for your interest in continuing to serve in this role. I really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you both soon.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
David did just join us.
Oh, great. Hi, David. You're welcome to say something. Hey there. Good to see you.
Hello, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Yeah, they just switched me on, so thanks for allowing me to continue to serve the city for 4 more years. I've had the chance to do that for quite a while and appreciate the opportunity, and don't have any further to add because I know you have a busy agenda in front of you, but thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Good night. All right, and we've
Thanks,
confirmed.
Dave.
Oh. Nope. We've confirmed that Jill's not with us. So with that, we have before us item 3, CUP 2028, a reconsideration request.
Madam Mayor, members of council, as you'll recall, on March 2nd of this year, you approved a special exception to operate a tavern and social event center in conjunction with an existing bed and breakfast located at 1502 West Franklin Street. On March 11th, we did receive a request for you to reconsider that decision on behalf of the neighborhood association and several residents in the area. The question before you this evening is not a decision on the reconsideration, but whether or not you would like to take it up again at a future hearing. If you decide to reconsider, staff will ensure that we place this on a future agenda and appropriately notice the item. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have reviewed the request for reconsideration, also some correspondence from the community. We've had 3 public hearings and put a lot of work into this. I didn't see anything in the request that would cause me to reconsider, and so I will not be making a motion.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to say something? All right, well, with these reconsideration requests, if there's not a motion to reconsider, the item is considered taken care of. I just want to, okay, all right. Thank you. Next up is our consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We have 2 readings on the first reading calendar. 2 ordinances on the first reading calendar, excuse me.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection?
ORD-6-21 and ordinance CAR 20-00012 for property located at 921 North Shamrock Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential R-1A to single-family residential R-1C, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD-7-21 and ordinance CAR 20-00011 for property located at 1511 South Robert Street, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from general commercial C-2D to residential office with design review and development agreement R-ODDA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. So there's nothing on second and third reading. There's no unfinished business, so we are going to move into the public hearing portion of our evening. First off, we have CR 20-24, application actually from the City Boise Parks and Rec. Right now, it looks like we have Cody Riddle presenting, and then the applicant is the Parks Department. Jennifer, are you on? Is Jennifer with us tonight as well?
So,
Okay, Jennifer's likely on Teams. The West Bench Neighborhood Association is the one of record. We don't expect you to be here, so if you're here, please raise your hand so that we're able to call on you. And nobody signed up in advance on this item, so if any of you have zoomed in for this, also please raise your hand and we'll make sure we hear from you. Is anybody here tonight? And we actually have people in the room tonight. For those of you watching online, are any of you here tonight wanting to testify on this? Nope. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item is a request to rezone roughly 20 acres of city-owned property addressed at 3805 North Cole Road. The property, known as Spalding Ranch, is located just southeast of Capitol High School along Cole. The request is to change the zoning from R1C or single-family residential to A1 or open land. The property is currently located in a historic overlay, and that will not change with the proposed rezone. As indicated in your packet, the purpose of the rezone or the request is to accurately reflect the long-term plans for the property. As you know, the property was acquired by the city, and after significant public engagement, our friends at Parks plan to create a park focused on urban agriculture. This is in recognition of the historic homestead and farm that operated here until about 1924. But the question before you this evening is only the change in zoning, not to review the specific design details of the park. As indicated in your packet, the change in zoning is supported by the comprehensive plan. The A1 zone is allowed in the compact land use designation, and parks are listed in appropriate use. There are also a number of policies in the plan regarding his preservation or protection of historic resources and promoting urban agriculture. As you can see in the packet, the request was recommended for approval and unopposed at the Planning and Zoning Commission in February. This will certainly be a unique amenity for the city and for this side of town. So with that, we are recommending approval of the rezone this evening. I do believe Jennifer Tomlinson with Parks is with us virtually and would like to share a few comments with you. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Jennifer Tomlinson, business address 1104 Royal Boulevard. I just wanted to say real quick, just a thank you to the planning division for processing this request. And just to state for the record that we are in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report. And then I wanted to turn it over to Lisa Duplessis from our team who has been working on this project, just to give you guys a quick update on where we're at and kind of the steps that we've been going through. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Great.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. Let me share my screen with you real quick. Oh, it looks like I can't. Oh, thank you. Sorry, give me just a second. Okay. Okay, so as Jennifer mentioned, here is the beautiful barn at Spalding Ranch. I'm just going to give you a quick update of where we are at with this project. We have been working a lot behind the scenes, and it hasn't maybe been present to neighbors and different people that are watching the property, but definitely a lot of things have been happening behind the scenes. We've been working with key stakeholders and also putting in together an internal group, a team that's going to kind of lead this project. So not only have we worked with University of Idaho, the different neighborhood associations, irrigation districts, ACHD, and that list will grow as we continue down this road. This is to give you kind of a good, just general idea of the area. As Cody mentioned in his presentation, we have all these different sites that are identified, and what we have done as a project team is kind of broken them into 3 different quadrants. So the agricultural area, the orchard area, and then kind of our native landscape area. And I'm going to go through each one just to show you the progress that we've been making. The orchard area, we just last Friday planted 100 fruit trees on site. That was a big undertaking for us and something that we needed to get accomplished. That fruit will start coming in the next couple of years. All of the agriculture on site has been planned with a regenerative agriculture plan. So basically a low till, no till, really trying to build the soil up and keep things as organic and not certified organic, but as organic as we can. We did quite a bit of debris cleanup on the property as well this spring, and we will be working on a pest management system for the orchard area. If you drive by, it's a huge just visual that now we can tell things are moving and happening. The agriculture area is towards Mountain View on the north side of the property. It's approximately 6 acres, give or take. This is an area that we have designated into kind of 2 sections. So one will be more of a production area farm that will provide food for eventually the area on site, as well as some other culinary and educational programming. And then there will be a couple acres that will be dedicated to partner production. So we're not able to manage this property completely on our own, and it's going to take a lot of people in the community to really help us push forward. So we've already started, we have an MOU in place with University of Idaho, who's very interested in bringing in some different programs they have, not only Harvest Heroes, which is one where they work with veterans to teach them different agriculture methods. We've also worked with Global Gardens on different properties and are hoping to bring them up as well to use this as a teaching garden. The plan is for the next year or 2 is to really work on the soil. This area hasn't been farmed in a long time. So it will be drill seeding some cover crop in and trying to keep the weeds down, as well as building up the nutrients in the soil. And then lastly, there's an area that we have deemed the native areas. So this will provide a lot of ecosystem and habitat for birds, different animals. It will also try to replicate the sagebrush steppe ecosystem that the foothills are used to having, and kind of, again, bring that area back to natively what it was before. This will be in conjunction with Martha Braybeck, who's our restoration specialist, and will really help us rehabilitate this area as well as park staff. That was just kind of my quick presentation. And if anyone has any questions for Jennifer or I.
Madam Mayor.
Or, I think I heard Councilmember Woodings and then Council President. So go ahead, Councilmember Woodings.
Great, thank you. Lisa, thank you so much for that presentation. I know that a lot of us have been looking forward to seeing what goes on at Spalding Ranch and have had a lot of constituents reaching out to us and asking. So it's really neat to finally have this daylighted and to be going through this process. My question is, you've planted all these wonderful orchard trees. What will happen to the fruit once they're producing in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so Councilmember Woodings, that's a great question. So we eventually hope to have culinary classes on site. So typically what we do, just so you know, at Boise Urban Garden School, we have kind of a method to where our food goes. It's originally used in culinary programming. We also have a few CSAs, and then at the end of the day, any excess is donated to local food banks. So the goal is to have enough programming on site that fruit will be used. It's obviously going to be a lot in 3 years. So those are things we're still kind of working out, but at the end of the day, none of it will go to waste.
That's wonderful and great to hear. Thank you so much. I hope that we're able to teach a whole bunch of people how to preserve food so that we can enjoy it throughout the year.
Great, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lisa. Great presentation, and really looking forward to seeing this property continue to be rehabilitated. My question also has to do with the food. I know originally we talked about potentially doing some partnerships with our health sector partners around CSA as a prescription, if you will, for folks who otherwise might not have access to the kind of food that would help them keep healthy. Are we still pursuing that? Is there anything that City Council can do to support that?
Yeah, Councilmember Clegg, that's a great question as well. We have been in touch with St. Luke's and also the Idaho Hunger Relief Task Force. So those are both great organizations that help not only get food out into the community, but also work through veggie prescription programs. So I definitely think that there will be help that's needed down the road. And we're just not quite there yet, but beginning conversations have started.
Thank you. And then I have a quick question for Cody, if I could.
Of course.
Thank you, Cody. I very much support the rezone tonight, but as you noted, this is still indicated as compact development on our future land use map. Just wondered if there's any plans at the next time that we do amend that map to change the zoning, future land use zoning on this.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, there are not any immediate plans. We certainly could look at that with a future amendment to the land use map. The open land zone is allowed under the compact land use designation, so it's not out of line with the plan as currently written. But for clarity, we could certainly look at that in the future.
Thank you. And I wouldn't suggest that we bring a separate land use map amendment, but if we're doing one anyway, I think it would make sense to do one.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
No real questions here, just quick comment. Lisa, Jennifer, Cody, thank you so much. Hey, bud. There's the dog. Thank you so much for all the work here. I was in the neighborhood just a couple of weeks ago doing some mobile bike repair at one of the apartment complexes and got to tell some of the kids what was going to be happening so close to them and that they would have a active farm nearby. And they were just so excited. I think it's such a great thing to have in that area of town. And I also wanted to thank our previous or our council members who've been here longer than I have. This project got started before I was here. And so I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on this one.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Cody, Jennifer, and Lisa. I joined my colleagues in being very excited about that fruit. And I'm glad Councilmember Halliburton brought up the children. I'm thinking if we're contemplating ideas on what to do with that bounty, perhaps distributing some of that through our after-school programs I know some of our after-school sites have food pantries, and it would be wonderful if our kiddos could benefit from that.
All right, anyone else? Nope. Okay. Well, before we move into, I'm gonna see, make sure that there's
No.
still nobody here.
No, Madam Mayor.
There's not?
No, Madam
Okay.
Mayor.
All right, great. Well, this has been a long time coming, and I know several council members in particular have been very involved and very excited about this project. So it was so nice to see it proposed tonight. With that, I think, given that unless Cody has anything else he'd like to say, or there are additional questions that have arisen, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. All right. With that,
Okay. Madam Mayor, I move that we approve CAR 20-24, City of Boise Parks and Recreation, 3805 North Cole Road, the rezone of 20.57 acres from R-1CH, single family residential with historic district overlay, to A1H, open lands with historic district overlay.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Nope. All right. Just before the vote, I want to thank Lisa and Jennifer, and of course the committee and everybody that put work into this. It was a great project. Cool.
Holly Burton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, next up. Welcome, Celine. It's nice to have you in person.
Yes.
We have CAR 20-7 BVA's application for a rezone at 200 North 4th Street and their appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial for a CUP at the same location. So we've got quite a few people sign up in advance here, and then we've got folks in the room tonight. So my plan is we'll, of course, first hear from city staff, then from the applicant. I'll make sure I do this right because there's a rezone, so it's open to everybody, but we're still going to follow the appeal. So staff, then applicant, then everything, then applicant at the end again, right? Okay, great. And so then if you all want, I will go ahead and call for people in the room. I'll call you first in the event that you're wanting to go home, then you can testify and then head out. And then I will move into the people that have signed up online. And the Neighborhood Association of Record is Cliff Green. So we'll ask that in addition to the applicant's team being ready, will the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association be ready as well? And with that, Celine, go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, Saline Accord with the planning team. It's good to be back in person. So we're coming back to you this evening for a rezone and appeal of the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of a conditional use permit on 1.19 acres at the corner of 4th and Idaho. If you remember, we met a few months ago and discussed this project, and you all provided feedback to the applicant and deferred the public hearing to this evening. The applicant held 2 different neighborhood meetings and provided revisions. You can see just by quick glance, the height of both towers have changed a little bit, but several other items were redesigned as well. So to quickly go over what you saw last time, the north tower, which was along Bannock Street, was 10 stories in height, and the south tower along Idaho Street was 16 stories. There were 82 apartments and 5 floors of parking with 460 spaces. What's before you this evening is the north tower along Bannock at 11 stories. So they've added 1 additional story to allow for 100 apartments, with 5% of those utilizing housing vouchers. And then the south tower along Idaho Street at 13 stories, so a loss of 3 stories in height. They still have the 5 floors of parking, but they now have 420 spaces, which is a loss of 40 spaces for vehicular parking. The circulation has also changed. So before, as you can see here, the alley made a quarter turn and didn't go through the project, and it spilled out onto Bannock. And then the alley currently on 4th was the entrance for the drive-through. So the redesign allows the alley to be east-west with its configuration. And then there's an entrance on Bannock for the drive-through. You can also see in these slides just the difference for the green space. There was discussion about the streetscape and modulation of the building, so those are called out in green. The applicant has now added outdoor patios and modulated the building some more. So the Planning and Zoning Commission denied the CUP and recommended denial of the rezone. With these revisions, though, the planning team is now recommending approval of the rezone and to uphold the appeal. And with that recommendation of approval, we have offered suggestions for the associated development agreement regarding the height and the circulation and the residential uses. And it's certainly at the discretion of council to add additional conditions or modify these as suggested. And as a reminder, council may find error on the following grounds, and I'll stand for any questions.
Council
Madam
President.
Mayor.
Yep.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Go ahead.
Celine, thank you. So questions, the conditions that you showed on the previous slide are new ones, but the existing conditions on trees and sidewalk and other things are still the same. Is that what you're proposing?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, we don't have any conditions for trees or sidewalks at this time. The general condition would be general compliance with the plans proposed or included within the development agreement, and to work through, the finite details with design review.
But we could then impose a condition. Sorry, Madam Mayor, follow up.
Of course.
We could impose a condition that the sycamore and the other mature trees on the landscaping area to the east be retained, and that the landscape plan clearly show which trees on the street lawn will be retained and what the mitigation replacement trees will be for those removed. Is that correct?
Council President, that is correct. You can certainly add those details if you'd like tonight.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Jeff, I see Jeff Wardle there. Are you here representing the applicant?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm here on behalf of the applicant.
All right. Go ahead. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Did I do that?
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'm Jeff Wardle. My address is 251 East Front here in Boise, Suite 310. I'm a partner with Clark Wardle, and we are counsel to the development team and the applicant in this matter. We are grateful for the opportunity to be back in front of you tonight, and I want to assure you that we heard your direction on the 5th of January. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay. From your direction on the 5th of January, we have gone about enhancing the ground floor experience, increasing the pedestrian-oriented retail on the northwest corner, improving the landscaping, pedestrian facilities, cycling facilities, preserving the existing alignment of the alley, enhancing the setbacks and the definition of the building elements by increasing modulation, and reducing the total amount of parking while ensuring that there is adequate parking for the uses that are provided, as well as shared parking to provide public parking in the area. We listened to your direction. We went back and we had 2 additional meetings with the neighbors. We had additional neighbor consultation, and we took into consideration recommendations that they made, as well as the recommendations we heard from the council. We'd had further discussions with staff as we went about making those modifications. And we are in agreement with the staff report. And we recognize that there are additional requirements, as Councilmember Clegg points out, that will need to be addressed as conditions of approval. But as we set forth in our submittal, we believe we have made material modifications to the project to address the concerns set forth previously by council. As set forth in the staff report, we've attempted to identify exactly what those modifications have been. So let me walk you through the site. Overall, as Saline noted, we have made significant modifications to the site. We eliminated the northbound alley, integrated it with the existing configuration of the alley, extended the pedestrian plaza from the south through the north, so there's in mid-block connectivity between Bannock and Idaho, realigned the drive-through so it aligns now with the existing middle curb cut to the parking lot, and provided additional patios and landscaping. In doing this, along with the southern plaza, it doesn't appear there's a lot of change there, but what we did is modified the service facilities so that they're better integrated with the alley, and then took that design and extended it through to the north into a wider plaza. The northern plaza ranges in width from 20 to 25 feet and is integrated with patios for the walk-up units, as well as patio space for the lobby of the multifamily element. Additionally, along 4th and Idaho, and along Bannock, we sought to increase the amount of modulation between the upper elements and the pedestrian area. Doing that also meant that as we eliminated a portion of the commercial office space, the medical office on the first northwest corner on the first floor, that facilitated our ability to provide increased modulation, outdoor space for the public, and additional landscaping. Now, we have always been concerned with the existing mature trees. It has always been our plan to preserve them. We directed our landscape architect to provide further detail in the landscape plans that were submitted to you, identifying how that would be addressed. With respect to circulation, Saline highlighted how the overall site will work. We have minimized movement so that there is only one movement off of Bannock, and that is south into the drive-through for the bank. On Idaho Street, it remains a right in, right out on the from Idaho Street into the parking structure, and that too has been shifted slightly to the east to better align with the existing curb cuts. The traditional alignment of the alley is retained, and the external circulation in the neighborhood remains as originally proposed. In reviewing the comments that we received from you, we spent additional time doing a more detailed evaluation of how to better define the entrances to the various elements of the building, whether it be the residential piece, now the restaurant and retail piece, and the office pieces. And Cushing Terrell has gone to great lengths to ensure that each of those has a distinct feel, a distinct definition to them, and the ability to identify where they are. Additionally, with the work we did on redefining the alley, all service facilities have now been internalized and are accessible from the alley, retaining the traditional alignment there, and loading facilities as well as additional parking outside, the valet parking locations have been identified in the plan. So what is the impact of that? Well, on the northwest corner at 4th and Bannock, we eliminated the urgent care and replaced it with 6,000 square feet of space that could be utilized for restaurant or retail, with patios on both frontage, permitting some flexibility that it could be one or more users of that space. And additionally incorporated covered bike parking underneath the parking structure adjacent to the alley in an area that can be utilized for a variety of purposes. As a result, we recognize that you need to define these spaces, and with the experience that we have at City Center for utilizing public art to define these, Cushing Terrell has proposed that type of design here. On the eastern boundary, we further enhanced the pedestrian plaza by extending it all the way to Bannock Street and providing flexible space for patios and lobbies for the various multifamily elements with integration of space for those walk-up residences. Additionally, in the southeast corner, we further refined the design, and with the modification to the parking structure that I'll discuss in a moment, the service commercial area has been reduced at that corner, but it's enabled us to keep all of the back of house elements enclosed within the structure. Most importantly, we have further defined and enhanced what has been identified in the downtown Boise design guidelines as an important corner with additional architectural elements and definition. So how did we accomplish that? Well, the parking structure, as was indicated, has been reduced in size, and that is due to the fact that we shifted it an additional 10 feet to the east so that the parking structure now sits 15 feet off the property line. And as a result, we have been able to incorporate additional elements to it that are outlined in our supplemental submittal. That includes secured bike parking on each floor that's accessible from the ground floor. That includes additional storage and back of house elements that can be utilized by the multifamily elements, as well as the office elements. By doing this, it increased the prominence of the green wall on 4th Street, and it increases the buffer between 4th Street and the parking structure while providing the modulation that we talked about before in the definition at that corner. So what is the impact of it? Well, we have reduced the overall height of the South Tower from 232 feet to 199 feet at the parapet. But that's 190 feet with the roof element on 4th Street on the west and 186 from the ground to the roof on the east. We believe that this is a material reduction that was done by reducing and eliminating the residential condominiums and medical office space within the building. We shifted the parking structure to the east, which allowed us to realign the entrances. And in doing so, while 4th Street, while the property at the ground level remains at the street with additional landscaping behind the back of sidewalk, we feel that's appropriate, that a pedestrian experience in the urban environment should have the retail uses at street level. But by setting the garage back further and carrying the green wall down, we believe that there's further definition to the elements of this building. And that's why we appreciate the work that CTA has done. Now at the top of the building, we have reduced that overall top floor's height from what was proposed, in addition to eliminating the multifamily condominiums. And we have kept the patio and step back there to keep definition at the top of the building. With respect to the multifamily element, as Saline indicated, we added an additional floor, which takes us to 136 feet at the top of the architectural top at the parapet, but 132 feet to the top of the roof, which provides 100 units. And incorporating the recommendation that we further define the setback and define the residential space by shifting the structural elements of that building. The parking garage now cantilevers over the first level, but it allows us to shift by more than 7 feet the multifamily elements above the 74-foot level.
37.
We have kept the mix of units that we talked about, even with the addition of 100 units, that there'll be studios, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. And Brighton has indicated a commitment as set forth in the conditions to designate units as available for vouchers. The amenity space has been retained and enhanced and wraps around providing that definition. The same height of what we currently have is what essentially is the same height as the Imperial Plaza. We know that height is the #1 objection and concern of the neighboring property owners. But the reality is that an urban environment needs to be vertical. So how have we addressed neighborhood integration? Well, we've reduced the office space, which reduces the office parking demand. The increased number of apartments is offset by the elimination of condominiums and utilization of the enhanced management measures that we use elsewhere, as outlined in our submittal, help to ensure that there will be shared parking in the project, even with it being smaller. As for neighborhood integration of retail, a greater attention has been paid to the retail uses on the first floor, eliminating the medical office and ensuring that these are uses that have patios and exterior space that can be enjoyed by all. Additionally, great effort has been made to enhance the bike and pedestrian facilities in the site to increase the connectivity in the public space. We took the direction that you gave us. We conferred further with neighbors, and we agree with the staff report and conditions of approval. And with that, we request your approval and we request the granting of the appeal, and we'll stand for any further questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, if you'll give me just a second, I'm working on time.
Sure.
Trying to do timing before I have facilitate questions. All right, any questions for the applicant?
Madam Mayor?
Is that Councilmember Halliburton?
Yep.
Great, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeffrey, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for integrating quite a few of the things that we talked about last time, specifically some of the bicycle, pedestrian, and the alleyway were some of the major concerns that I had. I'm curious with the neighborhood meetings that you had, if anything productive came from those as far as recommendations or concerns that they had that you were able to integrate into any of the building design and changes.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I believe there were. I think you're going to hear tonight objections that we didn't make it shorter than it was wanted to be, but we did explore and have the discussions regarding changing that use on the first floor to be to be retail or restaurant, and how do you integrate that and provide additional plaza space. And so we attempted to incorporate those. If there was a reasonable recommendation that we could address, we did. We spent some time evaluating how do you enhance the amount of landscaping at the first level. How do you make that more active and engaged? So we did do those things. I think that the fundamental agreement to disagree is over what is the appropriate height and whether or not this is an appropriate use in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff, I appreciate your presentation and your proposed modifications. And this is just a curiosity question. I know that you've integrated patios throughout this design. Is any of the roof space usable in this project? More just a curiosity question.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Thompson, we did utilize the roof space at the 7th level, which is on top of the lower level apartments, which is usable as exterior patio space. Once we get up to 132 feet and the other issues that we have there at the top of the residential element, it starts to become a little bit of a challenge, because to get people there and to be able to meet code requirements, we'd have to make it even taller. And then as for the south tower, obviously there is, ICCU desires to have usable space for meetings with patios, the other things there that they will utilize similar to what a portion of that will be utilized similar to what other comparable institutions downtown are, but that again is at the 13th level and not on the roof.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Go ahead.
Jeff, thanks for the hard work that you've obviously done bringing this back to us again. I had a specific question for you about some of the objections that we got in writing. So you're right, there were some concerns with the height. And the other thing that that came up in the written submissions was that some people had concerns that even as redesigned, this proposal conflicts with some of our planning documents, and in particular, the old Boise East Side Master Plan. And I wondered if you had any thoughts about that you wanted to put on the record before we continue on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bajan. I think those issues were fully vetted at the last hearing. We recognize the concern that they have. We recognize the citations to the East Boise Master Plan. At the same time, I think the thing that we have to go back to is how does it integrate with the planning decisions that you made subsequent to that? And that is with Blueprint Boise, you made a very distinct modification to what was contemplated by that plan when the downtown mixed use area within the downtown planning area was designated as extending to 3rd Street as opposed to 4th Street. So I think it's important to note that the downtown mixed use zoning category contemplates a significantly more dense use than the mixed use that is across 3rd Street. So I know everybody can agree to disagree. I believe that the old Boise East End Master Plan is an important document. It should guide things. At the same time, I would point out that reliance on that document is what resulted in the elimination of significant amount of retail space at the ground floor of the Jefferson. And I think that as we've gone through time, people have recognized that plans guide, but plans are guided by other policy decisions that get made subsequent to that. And so I do think that to the extent that neighbors object based upon the old Boise East End master plan, I think to a certain extent that was subsumed a little bit by the comprehensive planning exercise that this body engaged in adopting Blueprint Boise and contemplating a significantly more dense land use in this location, with the mixed use to the east being the buffer to St. Luke's as opposed to this site.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Jeff, you mentioned that you are in agreement with the conditions that the planning staff is proposing. I'd like to ask you about a few other conditions. In your landscape plan, you identify how you will protect the trees that are to remain. You don't directly identify, unless I'm missing at which trees those are. And so I guess I would ask a condition that at design review, those trees are identified and that the landscape plan as written be followed to include the sycamore tree. I wonder how you feel about that one.
Councilmember Clegg, we recognize the importance of that, and we directed Bear Architects to do that. The Bear Design Group did. I mean, it's not necessarily clear from the documents, but both of the large trees on the east boundary are identified as being preserved, and the trees that are being eliminated are identified as well. But we're absolutely amenable to a condition to reaffirm and provide more detail regarding that through the design review process.
Thank you. And then you say that you will make 5 of the units available for vouchers. I'd like to put that in a condition as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. If we go forward with this. Thank you.
All right, any Councilmember Halliburton?
Yep, Madam Mayor, if no other council members have questions, I do have one more.
You're good, go ahead.
Jeffrey, I was wondering if you could just touch on the shared use parking a little bit more.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, when we talk about shared parking, the notion of shared parking is that you're not only providing parking for the mixture of uses that you're providing, but that there is capacity in the neighborhood. And that's something that we're sensitive to, because ICCU currently leases stalls to individuals in the neighborhood. And we recognize the need to continue to provide that. We also recognize that the East End Old Boise Master Plan contemplates a parking structure that provides publicly accessible parking at this location. And that's guided us from the very beginning. So as set forth in our transportation and parking evaluation in our supplemental materials, one of the things that we've talked about is, as you know, we own and control other parking garages in downtown. And if it becomes apparent that there is a conflict, we certainly can work with our tenants to offsite our employees. There are other opportunities to do that, to ensure that there is that constant availability of parking. And so we contemplate, Councilmember Halliburton, that we would utilize this garage very similar to how we utilize the Pioneer Crossing garage. You know, that's a parking garage that serves our tenants and our guests on the site, but it also provides a significant amount of overflow parking available to the public, and that we would integrate this, even though it's not going to be a CCDC garage, it would be integrated and function seamlessly like any of the other garages that we have downtown that are currently privately owned and operated by Car Park. So I think it's going to be relatively seamless, and I think it's consistent with what we've seen in other parking plans.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jeff. It looks like that's it for now, although I'm sure there will be more. We will now hear from, I did see think I saw Cliff Green, Mr. Green, the Downtown Neighborhood Association.
Yes, thank you. I'm trying to start video here. Here we go. Good evening, Mayor McLean, City Council members and guests. By way of introduction, as mentioned, I am Cliff Green, Secretary Treasurer of the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association, the DBNA. Today I'm standing in for Jennifer Rowan, President of the DBNA Board of Directors, as she had a previous commitment. The DBNA's mission is to encourage mindful residential growth in the heart of Boise, improving the quality of living for residents and the downtown experience for all. Last year, our neighborhood association underwent months of strategic planning, which resulted in the creation and adoption of neighborhood planning documents, including mission and vision statements, our core values, and finally, a 12-point platform of position statements voted on and approved by our members. We use these documents to guide our positions on projects like the one before you. So if you're interested, you can find these documents on our website at 83702boise.org. So a little bit of background on the involvement in the project. DBNA has been engaged in the consideration of the project on North 4th since before June of 2020. Initially in May, we were asked by Better Change for East Boise to meet, chat about their concerns with the project. Then President Tim Flaherty, board member Jennifer Rowan, and I met with Dan and Keith, residents of the Imperial Plaza and representatives of the group. We walked the property, reviewed renderings, and chatted about their concerns. Subsequently, on June 1st, President Flaherty met with Bench Alquist to express concerns voiced by the neighborhood, specifically changes in egress, need for underground parking, and overall fit with the neighborhood. July 1st, DBNA Board of Directors met, discussed the project, and voted to support the project with suggestions for improvement. Position was provided at the last testimony given on behalf of the DBNA by then President. On November 20th, 2020, DBNA sent a follow-up letter of support for the project, again including a modified list of items of concerns to be addressed. Subsequently, additional listening meetings were held by BBA to gain a better understanding of the issues and concerns of the neighborhood. I personally attended 2 of these meetings. In both meetings, new renderings based on the neighborhood feedback were discussed, and additional suggestions were discussed with the goal of making the project a better fit for the neighborhood. As a board representing downtown residents and businesses, DBNA is pleased that BBA made these efforts to alleviate many of the concerns voiced by our neighbors and our own board. The developer should be commended for holding meetings with the residents and stakeholders and being open to our concerns and suggestions. Although to date, the developer has not addressed 100% of concerns, and to be frank, I think it would be untenable to do so. As a result of the feedback they received, they've modified the original plans multiple times to make the project fit the neighborhood. As mentioned earlier, items addressed included reorienting the residential and commercial buildings, decreasing building height, street level activation with the addition of outdoor seating, awnings, community coffee shop, restaurant spaces, addition of a pocket park, pedestrian seating, changes in egress, block-up units with penthouse condominiums, shared ground level patio space, bike parking, screening the parking garage, and also saving mature trees for practical, excuse me. On March 3rd, 2021, the DBNA board met again, reviewed the progress, and chose to continue to support the change in zoning for the project with assurances that BVA would, 1, agree to construct the roof over the parking garage between the commercial and residential buildings in usable space. That was brought up a little bit earlier. We would love to see an inclusion of vegetation, benches, green space, similar to the 3rd floor deck at the Afton on 8th and River Streets, for those of you who have had the opportunity to see that. Secondly, continue listening with stakeholders. We've heard some concerns about the future use of the 20,000 square foot penthouse space. Before design review, final approval, we'd love to see the plan for that and let the neighbors consider it and comment. Thirdly, maximize green space in and around the project and in future changes. And lastly, again, we'd love to see the consideration of additional underground parking if practicable. Our goal is, and always has been, a balance between the representation of our members' concerns with the need of Boise to develop and address issues created by growth. So with the affirmation considerations, DBNA continues to stand in support of the change in zoning and moving forward with the 4th Street project. Thank you for your time. in consideration, and I will stand for questions if there are any.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Green? All right, it looks like there isn't right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, I had a question for Cody that I forgot to ask, or for Celine, I'm sorry.
Sure.
By all means. Thanks, Celine. One of the features of the design as it's come back to us is that it steps back on the east side on the southern portion, the southern tower. As I'm looking at it, that would be equivalent to the what the east side master plan calls for in terms of height, where that step back goes. Is that correct, or is it still higher than what the east side master plan would call for?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, sorry, I had to count for a second. The master plan shows 3 to 6 stories. And this section right here, I believe, Jeff, please feel free to correct me, but I believe is 7.
Oh, because of the part, yeah, the underneath. I wasn't counting that. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for Celine while we've got her up here? All right, it doesn't look like it right now. So we'll go ahead and start with public testimony. And as I said earlier, I'm going to ask people here in the room, give you the chance to testify first, and then we'll go into the list. And this evening, you do not need, if you're online or here, as long as you sign up on the sheet, we'll make sure there's a sheet down there. So we have your address for the record, but you don't need to read your address out loud, given the live streaming nature of this. So anybody that's online, the clerk will be able to get your address from you without you having to state it. And you can just give us your name. And then here, if you don't want to say your name out loud, let's just make sure that you've got it, or your address out loud. Let's just make sure we've got it for the record on a piece of paper. I'm just going to put the right one out. There we go. And then, so I just open it up. Do you want to start things off? Somebody here want to start things off? I'm sure. Are you? I'm going to ask Nancy, will you just come speak in the microphone just so that so that it's part of the record? Oh, sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And actually, will you grab this for me so it can be down there and people can sign in? Thank you. I appreciate it.
My question is if City Council is aware that the DBNA, I'm a member, and I know many other members who agree that DBNA does not poll, talk to, or discuss. The word was mentioned in that presentation that representative represents residents and businesses. I'm a member and we get and others, many agree, we receive no correspondence, no polls, no questionnaires, no discussion.
Okay.
That's
so,
I just wondered if the City Council is aware, and
I
that's all.
appreciate that. So what we and I understand your frustration. The way the process is set up when there are neighborhood associations of record, it's typically the board, and I'd encourage the Downtown Neighborhood Association to make sure that they're actually communicating with all residents, but boards of neighborhood associations take positions, and then so we recognize that while it might not be fully reflective of people that live within the area, it is the neighborhood association's board vote and decision that we're hearing when we hear that.
Okay, because no effort is made to really truly be a representative body. I just wanted to make sure that the City Council knows that. Thank you. And I can give my presentation if Celine's ready, and I'll start my 3 minutes. I'm sure go as fast as I can.
And just let us have your name.
But my name's Nancy Coyce. My address 3059 West Crescent Rim Drive.
Great, thank you. You can go ahead and get started.
Okay.
She'll start.
I am here to advocate for preservation of the current blueprint for this East Downtown neighborhood and to keep the zoning as it is as an intermediate rise neighborhood. I understand current thought and concern about future increase in population and concern about climate change that have put a focus on high-rise building design. Numerous illustrations presented to Planning and Zoning and City Council demonstrate that the proposed building for 4th and Idaho is grossly out of scale for the neighborhood. Rezone of this neighborhood to unlimited height would bring similar high-rise buildings and would herald the transformation of this unique and historic neighborhood to a second high-rise area downtown. Such a transformation would essentially remove the current neighborhood as we know it. We live during a time of rapid technological change and should consider the possibility that technological advances to address climate change, reduce greenhouse emissions, and create a sustainable society may be so successful that we do not need to remove a historic neighborhood like the one we know now in East Downtown. Innovative advances in biotechnology, carbon capture, and clean energy production are occurring at rapid pace. In addition, COVID-19 has accelerated us in a direction we were already moving, and ideas about economic infrastructure are evolving. We've experienced rapid change in the location from where our workforce works and meets. Telehealth is having a dramatic impact on how healthcare needs are met, with a large sector of our society adapting to virtual meetings with healthcare providers and drive-up outlets for rapid care. Our society is in the midst of rapid economic, technological, and social change. In summary, that's my slide. At stake is the loss of a downtown neighborhood. Zoning of unlimited height will herald transformation to a second high-rise area. The charming ambience and historic nature of this neighborhood, the very features that make Boise beautiful, will be removed. Advanced technology and innovative approaches to address population growth and global warming may make removal of this neighborhood unnecessary.
30-second warning.
Quality of life matters. Residents seek it. We have quality. Preserve it. We should continue the current zoning and vision for this neighborhood as an intermediate height transition to East End. Current buildings should be retrofitted for zero emission. New buildings should conform to current zoning and follow zero emission design. Residents now and 40 years from now will be glad we preserved a beautiful city.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to ask folks to just kind of be ready to come on up, queue up. We've got a long list of people online, so why don't you let it be known who'd like to testify next by moving in this direction so we can move people through. Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Sheffield. I'm testifying against the rezone of the BVA project. I have just a few counterpoints. BVA stated that they had 5 meetings with the neighborhood. This is because they had technical issues on 2 meetings. The first meetings were glitchy and no one could hear or understand. The second rescheduled meeting was because they started about 35 minutes late and they didn't have their Zoom set up properly. So while it is true, they had 5 meetings, they really only had 3. 2 meetings were makeup meetings. In response to not building parking underground, the first meeting they said it was too expensive. And as the meetings went on, they said they wanted to repurpose the garage in the future. And finally, the last meeting they said they were not going to build underground parking no matter what. If they build parking underground, they could repurpose it later. They could make it into storage, as downtown condominiums never have enough storage. As we all know, last month we had a fire on the 8-story apartment complex. The fire chief said on TV that was about the max that a ladder truck could go. About 9 months before that, the fire department was doing training at the Imperial, and I talked to them. They were training with the ladder, and they said they could not reach the 11th or the 12th floor. Keeping citizens safe in housing or the workspace should be a priority. And finally, I would like to address white privilege. This is exactly what's going on with this building proposal. They own the land, so they believe they can do what they want. They have never made any plans to be at zone height. They believe since they own the land, they have been working on this project for 2 years, that they should be able to continue to proceed on their terms. They own the land. They feel that they know what's best for the rest of the community. This is white privilege. Please do not let them build because they want to, because they feel they know best, and because they own the land. Preserve the neighborhood for the future of Boise. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna wipe it off.
Great. Come on up. I don't have anybody's names, so normally I'd be calling you by name, but I don't have a sign-up sheet for people. So I'm going to ask you that you come on through. Yep. Yeah. And then I'm going to ask, ma'am, if you'll plan on coming up next.
Okay. Okay. So I'm ready?
Yes, welcome.
Oh, can I just adjust this down?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Pam Sheldon, 2274 South Geckler Lane in Boise. As planning director for CCDC, I supervise the team that wrote the Old Boise East Side Master Plan. The city has recognized the master plan as part of the city's comprehensive plan and states that this master plan is the neighborhood plan for the site where the applicant's rezoning is proposed. Slide 1. The Old Boise East Side area includes a commercial area and the East Side neighborhood. There is a distinct change in character between the two areas, which you can see from where the tree canopy begins at 5th Street. Slide number 2. It is obvious that the neighborhood area has always been envisioned as a residential area based on the way the streets were originally built. They include an 11 to 12-foot tree lawn and a 6-foot sidewalk. Slide 3. In the commercial area to the west and throughout the central business district, the streets include hard surface sidewalks 14 to 17 feet wide, which fill the area between the property line and the curb. Here are some additional pictures of the street design in East Side, slide 4 and slide 5. The result has been a neighborhood that is a very desirable place to live. The comprehensive plan and the master plan identify East Side as a prime location for a thriving in-town neighborhood where residential is the predominant use. Go to slide 7. The East Side neighborhood is not this, where the street design and placement of buildings signal a commercial area. The applicant's request for C5 zoning, the city's most intense commercial district, in order to build a project with a high-rise office tower as its predominant use, is not in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan for East Side. Now I'm going to talk about the compatibility of the applicant's proposal to its surroundings. The applicant was asked several times at neighborhood meetings to provide full height views of their building as someone would see them from street level. They have declined to do so. I have tried to approximate what such a view would show. Slide 8. I have used the Aspen Lofts building as a ruler because it is 196 feet tall and the proposed project is 199 feet tall. The green line shows the height of most of the buildings in the East Side neighborhood. The orange line shows the height of the rest of the buildings, except for the Jefferson, shown by the blue line, and Imperial Plaza, shown by the red line. Aspen Lofts is an imposing building. It works because it is in the central business district, where people expect buildings of this size and has lots of company. Slide 11. This is the character of East Side. The applicant's proposed building does not work here. It is not compatible with the development that surrounds the site. Nowhere in Blueprint Boise or in the master plan does it say that this area should become an extension of the central business district. Decision criteria 1 and 3 cannot be met. I urge you to deny the rezoning request. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Pam.
Madam Mayor.
Oh, Pam, you've got a question if you don't mind taking it.
Oh, certainly.
Sorry, Pam.
No, that's all right.
First, thank you for your hard work on the the East Side Master Plan. And I'm sure it was not
Thank you.
trivial or an easy lift. What I wanted to ask you, because
Yes.
you have some expertise there, was, I'm not sure if you were here the whole time, but if you could respond to something that counsel for the applicant said, which was, in his view, the East Side Master Plan is important, but we need to read it in conjunction with the downtown plans, which contemplate mixed use all the way out to 3rd Street. And so when I asked him, what about the thing that you said about the East Side Master Plan, his response was, well, there are later and more recent plans that change how we should view that plan and how we should view the use, the nature of the use in the East Side. And so I wondered if you'd heard what he'd said and if you had anything in particular to say in response.
Well, I would have to know more about what he's referring to. Is he referring to the downtown area plan that's in Blueprint Boise?
In part, yep.
Right, okay. Well, it shows the part of the East Side neighborhood as downtown mixed use, and part of it is mixed use. I couldn't find a definition in Blueprint Boise as to the intensity that goes with those descriptions. So I think that, I guess the way I would read it is mixed use comes up both in the downtown area plan and in Old Boise Master Plan. The Blueprint Boise specifically says that the master plans as the neighborhood plans for their areas should be used to guide development. And so the master plan provides more detail on heights and densities. And that's where I think the built form map that shows 6 stories, the description of the residential emphasis area, and the emphasis on moderate increases of intensity in this neighborhood, medium density, would be added clarification of what the vision is for this area.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Are you going to testify? Nope. Are you testifying? Nope. You're not either? Nobody else? Nobody else in here is testifying. Okay. All right. We are going to go. So everybody that's watching on Zoom now, please be ready. We're going to go for a little bit longer. In about 15 minutes, we'll take a break. But first, do you have the list too? Okay. We've got Bob Snyder, Dan Everhart, and Sharon Cast Black. I see Sharon.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Bob, Dan, and Sharon are all online.
Great. All right. We'll go in order. Bob, welcome. You're muted. We still can't hear you, and it looks like you're muted from our end, so there should be a spot where you see the audio thing if there's a little arrow up. Are we on Zoom? Is that the platform? Can you unmute him? There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes, my name is Bob Snyder. I'm a native Boisean, proud to be living downtown at the Imperial Plaza. I'm speaking for denial of the rezone of the Idaho Central parcel. I support redevelopment of the property, but not at the massive size that has been proposed. I was hoping the BVA would have proposed an alternative with substantive changes in size, setback, and height. The development needs to be smart, blending in with surrounding properties, offering more unrestricted public space. The BVA project needs to contribute to public open space that Boise is known for. For example, approximately 1/6 of the Imperial Plaza footprint is unrestricted lawn area. Recently, closer to downtown, the Gibson Apartments included a pocket park and other open area. One condition of the building needs to have setbacks similar to the adjoining buildings, and that has been explained in the testimony already, and I think you will hear several times having that repeated. This would increase public space, which would blend better with the surrounding buildings and sight lines. The proposed structure will encompass more than half of the block. There's only one other structure in the central business district which surpasses the footprint, and that is the Boise Plaza, formerly the Boise Cascade building, at 74 feet and 6 floors. BVA is proposing too much for this location. Boise deserves and needs a green building to show its commitment to future generations and conservation. One of the most obvious changes would be the use of the geothermal. The current proposal does not show any commitment to being green. The proposal needs to replace the apartments with condos, which are very limited in the downtown area. Evidence shows the benefits of home ownership in an urban area over apartments. In conclusion, I feel there have been enough documentation on the legal issues justifying denial. The project sets the precedent for similar towers outside the central business district. Do we want similar towers near the St. John's Cathedral area to the north? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Bob. I see Dan, and you're up, so welcome.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Can I ask that my partner also be able to use the same device immediately following my testimony?
Yeah, sure, that's great.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Dan Everhart, and I'm here to express my concerns, which are mine as an individual and do not reflect the views of the Idaho State Historical Society where I am employed. My testimony focuses on a few key points. First, the decision before the City Council is whether to approve or deny a request for rezoning from RO to C5. Second, the city's approval criteria for rezoning requests are specifically stated in Boise City Code as follows. 1, is it in compliance with a comprehensive plan? 2, is it in the best interests of the public convenience and general welfare? And 3, does it maintain and preserve compatibility of surrounding zoning and development? If the rezoning fails to meet one or more of these criteria, the request is a non-starter. However, almost all of the discussion by planning commissioners and city council members of this request has been on the applicant's description of the project they want to build, whether commissioners and council members like the project, and what they want changed in the project. There has been little or no discussion on what the comprehensive plan says about the location proposed for rezoning, that's criteria 1, or whether the rezoning maintains and preserves compatibility with surroundings, that's criteria 3. The comprehensive plan that applies to the rezoning location includes Blueprint Boise and the Old Boise East Side Plan. Here's a very short summary of these plans and their applicable guidance. 1, create thriving downtown neighborhoods at the periphery of the central business district. 2, Old Boise East Side has been recognized as an area suitable for complementary infill development and not for wholesale redevelopment. 3, the preferred development concept for Old Boise East Side does not envision a dramatic change in character of the physical environment other than a modest increase in intensity and a better balance between land uses. 4, it encourages residential development, which has been identified as a prime location for an urban neighborhood. The proposed rezoning location is in the residential emphasis area. 5, it uses the built form map as a general guide to appropriate building heights. It gives attention to scale and massing of adjacent buildings and designing for a particular site. And the built form map shows that the rezoning location is suitable for 3 to 6 story buildings. 6, it requests that it demands actually that you preserve the historic character of the Old Boise East Side and allow new buildings as long as they are compatible with the refined nature of Old Boise East Side and respect adjacent historic buildings. Nowhere does the comprehensive plan say that this area should become an extension of the central business district. In fact, this is specifically called out as an area of stability not in the plan, not an area of change. Nowhere does the plan anticipate a 420,000 square foot mega building on a single block being built at this site. Please don't ignore the public's input on your plans, and the staff's recommendation should be overturned and the guidance of the plan should be followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And yes, Keith, is it Keith? Keith Gaines?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Good evening. My name is Keith Gaines. I'm speaking in opposition of the application as well. As you know, Boise City Code requires that rezone requests be in compliance with the comprehensive plan, and that the old Boise Eastside Master Plan is a specific neighborhood plan that governs this property. The old Boise Eastside Master Plan indicates that the preferred land use for the property is modest infill development of medium scale with a residential emphasis that respects the scale and massing of nearby historic buildings. Pam Sheldon, the professional planner who supervised the creation of the old Boise Eastside Master Plan, has already told the city this application does not comport with that planning document. The old Boise Eastside Plan is the current plan adopted for the city of Boise, and it cannot be ignored or simply deemed outdated. If the city council deviates from the comprehensive plan, it can only be if present factual circumstance is that the existing neighborhood has already changed to the extent that the planning documents are obsolete. It is undeniable that nothing even remotely similar to the proposed development has been built in this neighborhood since the old Boise Eastside Plan was first adopted in 2004. The city cannot spot zone to serve as the catalyst for these changes to the neighborhood. According to the city's website, the current zoning code rewrite is a 2-year process that will involve public input, preserve community character, and represent Boise's diverse geographies. Appropriately, the city council would not consider undertaking this kind of a planning exercise by itself. If the city council wants to change the long-term vision for this neighborhood, it should do so through an amendment to the comprehensive plan after public input and deliberate thought into such changes. It should not do so tonight through an approval of this radical application. The question before the city is not if you like the application or if you believe the application is a good idea. As a citizen, it is frustrating to see city representatives refer to personal long-term visions for the area and to barter with the applicant to add multifamily residences in exchange for approval of a massive 200-foot tall commercial office development. Before making a decision tonight, I respectfully ask the city do the right thing and acknowledge the planning documents that have been adopted for the neighborhood surrounding and including this property. Since the city cannot ignore the adopted plans and goals and cannot use the rezone process to adopt new ones, the only legally supported decision is denial of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And next we have, I'm sorry, do we say your name Sharon or Sharon?
Sharon.
Sharon, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Cass-Black. I live at 200 North 3rd Street, condo 805. Dear city leaders, you've heard and read the many compelling arguments of my neighbors in opposition to this project. I will not repeat them here, but please know that I am in full agreement and support of all who oppose it. I'm addressing you because of the Idaho Statesman coverage that followed the city council meeting, which reported of the overwhelming testimony in opposition concerning this monolithic structure, which will irreversibly degrade our historic neighborhood, that there was some testimony for and some against. At that point, I realized that powerful players were manipulating not only the Downtown Association and the city officials, but the media as well. And I could not trust that the covenant between the citizens and their city would be upheld. For that reason, I implore you to carefully consider this decision and its implications and the legacy you leave behind. I've watched this process with dismay, with complete disregard for the thoughtful plans created to guide the development of our city. 10 months ago, a proposal for a completely inappropriate giant glass box was submitted. It was rejected, but a foot was in the door, and BVA has been forcing it open wider and wider by ignoring the inconvenient input of those who oppose them and creating an illusion of compromise. Make no mistake, they are getting exactly what they wanted all along. Now that they've added some green space and made efforts to hide the parking lot, it looks less offensive, but it is no more appropriate. Had this design been submitted 10 months ago, it would have been rejected. However, we've learned that the city planners have been manipulated into believing that it is now acceptable. It is not. And you, our leaders, are being deceived and used as pawns by smart and powerful players. Understand this. If you approve this rezone, you are gifting BVA the difference between the value of the land they already own and the cost of property appropriate for this build. Gifting. BVA stands to make an enormous multi-million-dollar profit from this project every year. They do not need your gift. What is needed is the leadership you are elected to provide. The citizens in this city need your protection from any rich and powerful developer who thinks the rules don't apply to them. We need you to protect us from any organization whose representative would indicate in public to you that neighborhood meetings weren't necessary because they already knew what we had to say, and who would later blame technology for making the meeting that they were forced to hold less than ideal. BVA cares about one thing, the profit. It's your job to care about the people. Through this process, BVA has shown an arrogant and blatant disregard for the rules that govern our city's development and the people who live here. Big money can afford to be disrespectful. BVA is acting in their own best interest. We need you as our representatives to act in ours. Leaders, make them put this building where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. And I also have a Sean Black. Is that just, do they just happen to have the same last name, or they the same household? All right, is Sean available?
Sean is online.
Great, we've got Sean, then Bonnie Krupp. You're up in line. Jennifer Geiger, and Tom Keeley. Hi, Sean.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, great. Madam Mayor and council members, my name is Sean Black. We urge the city of Boise to deny this appeal. During all of the hearings so far, we've heard testimony that's overwhelmingly opposed to this project. BVA is avoiding the cost to purchase land in the appropriate zoned area. Don't lose sight of this. What I find disturbing about this process is this. After hearing overwhelming testimony from citizens directly affected by this project, the city officials immediately begin a discussion regarding how this project can go forward and possible concessions BVA can make to get their approval. The comments move immediately to discussion around, well, if the Imperial Plaza is 12 stories, maybe this building can equal that height. We hear discussion indicating that maybe if BVA will provide a 5-foot setback, that could be considered. Our elected city officials are not hearing what the people that are impacted immediately are saying at all. If you think that limiting this building to 12 floors and having 5 more feet from the sidewalk in a 20-foot wide pedestrian plaza will placate all those that are testifying, you're absolutely wrong. Furthermore, I'm not convinced that the city understands the points of negotiation here. You have the control of the negotiation and could step up your ask considerably. What I've heard so far is the city mentions things to them and then nod your head up and down when they explain why your ask is simply not feasible. A great example of this is the vouchers. BVA has offered to accept 5 vouchers out of 100 units. That's the extent of your negotiation. That's pitiful. If your goal is downtown affordable housing, this project will not achieve it, but you could easily place 2 Jefferson buildings in this footprint and get far more than 100 units and keep the building within the current zoning requirements. Wake up. This building is being shoved down our throats for the simple reason that they already own the land here and do not want to negotiate for the land in the appropriately zoned area. And from what I've seen so far from this city council, is you're playing right into their hands. They offer up an enormous glass box to maximize square foot rental space, then pull back here and there to supposedly respond to your requests. If you approve this, you may think you have negotiated on behalf of Boise, but the reality is you will have been played expertly by these developers. BVA is avoiding the cost to purchase land in the appropriately zoned area. If you're going to allow this building in this location, at least negotiate a deal that gets Boise what it needs, like low-income housing, rather than just allowing BVA to pocket all the profit. Get value out of the negotiation. By allowing them to place the building at this property, you essentially are handing them a check for the amount of money that purchasing the ground in the appropriate area would cost. Is that fair to all the other developers that are required to abide by the zoning for their projects? What will you tell them when they propose future projects that require zoning changes? They will remind you of what you did here. If the city of Boise believes the comprehensive plan needs revision, then make,
Your time's up.
Pardon?
I'm just gonna let you finish that sentence.
I said, just make the decision to revise it and begin the process of getting stakeholder input. These changes shouldn't be allowed in this format. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, Bonnie Krupp.
Madam Mayor, she's not online.
Okay. Jennifer Geiger.
Thank you. Saline, do you have my slide 1?
Yes, we can see slides.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Geiger, and I'm the daughter of John and Kathy Hawkinson. My parents own this charming bungalow at 305 West Bannock Street, which sits directly northeast of the proposed BVA Northern Tower. In 1992, the ICCU building was owned by the Jantz Corporation. They had also owned my parents' bungalow, which they purchased from Jantz in 1992, saving it from being moved or from demolition. From 1992 to 1993, my parents did a total renovation and restoration inside and out. This office would become their corporate headquarters for their hardwood lumber company, which was called Hawkeye Forest Products Incorporated. The building price and renovation costs were $400,000. After graduating from college, myself and my younger brother, Marcus Hawkinson, worked for our parents in the family business. I worked inside this office for over 18 years. We have maintained this beautiful office both inside and out for the past 28 years, and it is in excellent condition. It is an asset to downtown Boise and adds character to our charming and historic Northeast End neighborhood. This quiet and historic part of East Downtown Boise is the reason why my parents bought this bungalow in the first place. Slide 2, please. BVA's proposed northern tower at 136 feet tall would sit just 20 feet from our office on their east side. This wall to our west would eliminate all bright afternoon sunshine that comes through our many bay windows. These windows brighten our office so much that we oftentimes don't even have the need to turn on the interior lights. We are also worried about the beautiful 90-year-old bur oak tree that sits on the property line between our property and ICCU's property line. Per arborist Brian Jorgensen's report, the crown spread of our tree is 60 to 70 feet in diameter. We know BVA will have to trim the canopy back on the west side of this tree since there is only a 20-foot setback from our property line to their building. We are very fearful that this will damage our tree. I'd like to point out also, as Nancy stated earlier, that my parents were never contacted directly by the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association to give or get their input on this project, nor was a flyer or letter ever left at our office by their association. Myself and my family disapprove of this project. We feel it's in an inappropriate scale and fit for our neighborhood, and we feel it will have a negative impact on surrounding property values, including our own. Thank you for your time and consideration in declining the zoning of this project.
Jennifer, thanks for calling in. Please say hi to Tony and your parents for me.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Tom Keeley.
Can you hear me? This is Tom Keeley.
Yeah, we can hear you, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor and council members, good evening, and thank you for taking my comments. My name is Tom Keeley. My wife Joy and I own the Chicago Connection restaurant across the street and that classic building. This proposed building is too tall, and even with its new mixed occupancy, it will still bring over 7,000 traffic visits per day. In the traffic study that was submitted last fall with the original mixed use, it was still over 700 visits per hour. Does not seem to be sufficient parking, even at the reduced, especially at the reduced 420 spaces on the site. And that pressure of heavy traffic is very unsatisfactory for this neighborhood in East Boise. We attended many of the meetings. We attended in the parking lot meeting last June. We attended the most recent meeting this I think about a month ago. At that meeting, I asked about a new traffic study based on the new occupancy to see what it would mean. Last week, I pinged the developer, Mr. Peterson at BVA, who said he would send that to us. I got a message this evening at 5:16 that there is not going to be an additional traffic study based on the mixed occupancy or the new change in occupancy, that it will still stay at relatively the same level and no new traffic study would be needed. So again, we want to focus on the traffic in this area will be heavy and not really beneficial for this neighborhood. And we support the other negative opinions about this structure as designed currently. And I also want to add that the downtown Boise Association did not contact us either as business owners in this neighborhood. So we did not have any opportunity to give an opinion about this to them. Thank you for your consideration tonight, and hopefully you will deny the proposal as presented. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Tom, if you're still on the line, Councilmember Woodings has a question.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, I am. Go ahead, council member.
Thank you, Tom. I don't think my question's actually for you. I just wanted to clarify something related to the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association, because we've heard from a few business owners who said that they have not been reached out to, but it's my understanding that the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association was for the residents of downtown Boise, and the Downtown Boise Association is for the businesses within a certain geography. Is there anyone in council chamber who can either, I don't know, maybe Celine?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that before we went further, just because we've heard from a few folks who were upset that they hadn't been reached out to, but that's not the intent of DBNA.
Right, yep. All right, thank you, Councilmember. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I think you're good to go now, Tom. Say hi to Joy for me. Brian Jorgensen?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am here. My name's Brian Jorgensen, and I am here on behalf of Better Change for East Downtown, who hired me as a consulting arborist to examine and give some input on protection and health of the trees on the site. I have testified at previous meetings, but I do want to say the latest landscape plan does make some general statements about tree protection, particularly on the two large trees, the London plane tree and the bur oak that was mentioned earlier. And those changes, those notes are welcome, but I don't believe that they are detailed enough to secure true protection for those trees. Over the years, as both Boise City Forester and as an independent arborist, I have seen a lot of plans presented where they say they're preserving the trees when really all they do is leave them standing. And preserving a tree, particularly two old historic trees like this, requires much more than just leaving them standing. In the plans, it is mentioned that the entire root zone will be protected, but under both trees, there's significant infrastructure and landscaping being placed directly under the canopy of those trees. I'm particularly concerned about the London plane tree, the sycamore, since it is currently in a lawn situation, and the plans look like they would affect 50%, close to 50% of the root zone of that tree. I believe that we can do better than this, and we need to do better than this. in order to protect the namesake of our city, the trees. And so I am here to ask that the council, if this plan goes forward, exercise its power to require further investigation and further requirements for tree protection on the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Brian, if you're still here, Council President.
Good evening, Brian.
Hi.
Good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Question for you. If we were to go forward with this and we were to require additional protection for these trees, it has occurred to me that perhaps the best way to do that would be to require a review by our now city arborist and recommendations for protection during construction and for design around it to protect the root ball. Do you have any other suggestions beyond that?
Well, there are other, besides myself, other consulting arborists in the state of Idaho who could do that too. As you know, the city forester is responsible, has jurisdiction over public trees. In other words, the street trees. And I do think that some further clarification on the protection of the street trees is necessary here too. I'd like to see them remain outside of the construction zone altogether. But the two trees in question here, I believe, are privately owned trees. And whether that makes a difference to the council or not, I don't know. But there are certainly, there's myself and I know of at least two other consulting arborists that, including a registered consultant arborist, something I'm still aspiring to, in the state of Idaho that could help.
In other words, you do agree that having an arborist look at these and provide further recommendations would be one strategy we could use.
Absolutely, and I think I included that recommendation in my initial report last fall for the Better Change for East Downtown. I do think an arborist with some experience in reviewing construction plans and with some experience in finding some alternatives to what might be planned right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brian. And next up, we have Heidi Bogert.
Saline, will you show the slides that were submitted by John Barnett? Thank you.
We can
Madam
see them.
Mayor.
Welcome. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Okay. Sorry, let me get my, okay. The first slide, excuse me, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Heidi Bogert, and I'm here to urge the City Council to deny this application by BVA to rezone the property. The presentation I am giving was prepared by John Barnett, also a resident of Imperial Plaza. We're including in this presentation 6 simulated renderings of the project for your consideration. These renderings were created using Google Earth, which enables the placement of boxes drawn to scale to the approximate shape and size of the structures. The box representing the larger South Tower is at its stated 200 feet, including the mechanicals. The North L-shaped tower is set at 135 feet. The bridging parking structure is 55 feet. The top view is looking from the southwest at 4th and Idaho. Note the dwarfed 136-foot Imperial Plaza and 75-foot Jefferson to the left. Those are each within a block of the project. The bottom view is looking from the northeast at 3rd and Bannock Street, and you can see the 2 historic houses at the corner of the block adjacent to the base of this dominating project. Slide 2, please. The next 4 views are showing the project within the context of its broader East Boise neighborhood. In the top from the Idaho State House dome, you can see the old Ada County Courthouse at the left. the St. Luke's Hospital Tower in the distance. The bottom view is looking east along Idaho Street from Capitol, an eye level of 75 feet. This view shows how dramatically this project's mass and height dominate its surroundings. The next slide, please. These two views suggest that the project's mass and height would be more appropriate with similar tall buildings in the downtown Boise core over 3 blocks to the west. And the final slide. The BVA project is not at all compatible with the current Blueprint Boise, which we've all discussed. The built form, which is figure 9 on page 37 within the plan, explicitly places the project boundaries with the 3 to 6 stories, which was covered earlier by Councilman Bajan. This rezone would allow construction of a project that is wrong for a historic neighborhood in which it has been proposed. Please deny this application and protect the character and integrity of East Boise downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. So we're gonna take a quick break, but I have a question first. Heidi, notes here say that you were here for John Barnett. Is John also planning on speaking, or was it?
I was speaking on his presentation, and he is presently on a plane back to Boise, so he wasn't going to be able to speak. He gets in late this evening.
That's okay. That's okay. I just, if he was there with you, I didn't want to take a break and have him hanging. But thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll be out before 8. Thanks, everybody. Yes.
I just wonder when, some people have already spoken.
Okay, is it a person that's not on this list?
Correct.
Okay, great. Going. I'm muted. Could you unmute the? Oh, you're fine. I just said something so council members would know to turn on their cameras. Great, welcome back, everybody. I made the mistake of putting a ginger chew in my mouth, excuse me. I've been made aware that somebody has already raised their hand on Zoom. We see you. I just want you to know that we see you. We're going to go through the list of people that signed up in advance, and then we'll start to call on people that didn't sign up. And if you don't hear your name, put your hand up, but just know that we'll notice those. Welcome back, everybody. Next up on the list, I have Matthew Parks. And then after Matthew, Patricia Dunlap. Hello there, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I think you all know that you've got an unenviable task tonight, but hopefully I can maybe steer you in a direction that might help you with that. I think I've stated in my written materials that your job here is to act as a judge, not as a legislator. And by that, I mean that, you know, the difference between a judge and a legislative body is that a judge has got to follow the rules and make a ruling in accordance with that set of rules. And a legislator, you get to make up those rules. So here we got to look, what are the rules that you're supposed to follow? You're supposed to follow the comprehensive plan that's in place. And the current specific plan addressing this site is the Old Boise East Side Plan. And with respect to the Old Boise East Side Plan, Blueprint Boise reads that, and this to kind of address the comments made by Councilmember Bajan and questions to Pam Sheldon and the comments made by Jeff Wardle. This master plan, the Old Boise East Side Plan, covers the area approximately from Capitol Boulevard to Broadway and from Jefferson Street to Grove Street, excluding St. Luke's Regional Medical Center, or 49 acres, so it's a pretty big area. The existing urban fabric is fine grained and includes numerous historic buildings. It includes a commercial district from the pioneer days and a traditional neighborhood with early 20th century houses and tree-lined streets. And here is the critical language from Blueprint Boise. The preferred development concept does not envision a dramatic change in character other than a modest increase in intensity, a better balance between land uses, slowing the conversion of houses to offices, and adding housing. So Blueprint Boise did not replace the Old Boise East Side Plan. In fact, I think it doubled down on the application of the Old Boise East Side plans and goals. The plan, as a planning document, has no termination date. It does not evaporate on December 31st, 2025, when the revenue allocation area of the River Myrtle Urban Rural District expires. Until it's replaced or officially discarded, it can't be ignored, and it must guide your decision as judges. If you like the project and think the plan's outdated and you ignore the plan, you're abdicating your judicial responsibilities. You are elected to uphold the law and make legislative decisions in your capacity as legislators, but also to be responsible judges in your role as decision makers on land use applications. I ask you to ask yourselves in the role as judge, does this project comply with the current adopted planning documents that envision modest density on the site, maybe 3 to 6 stories? Does a 200-foot building preserve the historic character of the neighborhood? Does this project give appropriate consideration to the scale and character of adjacent buildings? I would say no. For an in-depth explanation or analysis, go back to planning's staff's report dated November 2nd, 2020 in the record. As staff commented, while the vertical mixed-use concept is in compliance with the comprehensive plan, the height and design features of the proposal do not align with the River Myrtle Old Boise Master Plan. I'm not opposed to development. I'm in favor of it, but plan development. And I see my time is over, and thank you for indulging me.
Thank you very much. Next up, Patricia Dunlap, and then Dennis Benjamin.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, I am both a resident and a business owner in the East End neighborhood, and I have not been contacted by the Boise Neighborhood Association at all on this project. I echo the sentiments of Matt in that this proposed rezone does not comply with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. It gives no direction, no consideration to the scale and character of the adjacent buildings. With its lack of setbacks, its egregious height, it is in direct contradiction to the goal of maintaining and developing a desirable residential neighborhood. The scale and massing of this project would make it one of the largest buildings in the central business district. In the old Boise East Side area, it is completely overwhelming. The vast majority of projects being currently built in downtown Boise are less than 10 stories high. It is hard to understand why this project needs to be so dense and so tall in this neighborhood. Building that would extend the central business district into the East Side neighborhood, which is in direct contradiction to the goals of the adopted Boise City Comprehensive Plan. The City Council is not authorized to ignore the currently adopted planning documents or to make up new plans or goals for future development in the context of a rezone application. As the citizens of Boise, we rely on the City Council to maintain the integrity of the planning process. If the City Council wants to adopt new plans and goals, it should do so through the amendment to the comprehensive plan, which requires public input and deliberative thought to make changes to it. The rezone application is not the appropriate place for such drastic decision. We residents and owners of the East Side neighborhood, business owners of the East Side neighborhood are asking the City Council to listen to our concerns and do their jobs as elected representatives of the citizens of Boise and defend us against this inappropriate development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hello, Dennis. Welcome.
Hello. I'm Dennis Benjamin. I'm one of the co-owners of the historic Uranga House at 303 West Bannock. It was asked last meeting how far would the developer go to gain the rezone. The answer turned out to be not very far at all. Now, to be sure, the developer has added some sweeteners, but none of which reduce the scale of the project. True, a very few housing vouchers will be accepted. True, there will be some covered parking for bicycles. Some desultory efforts will be made to protect 2 of the large trees. But I would note that the 80-foot oak tree behind our property, which is adjacent to the alleyway, will likely be killed when the new 8-inch sewer line is trenched down the alleyway to 3rd Street, because it'll cut away about half of our tree's root ball, which extends under the alleyway. Now, true, there's going to be a coffee shop with outdoor seating where the Salsa Urgent Medical Care Clinic used to be, but it's ironic that the clinic has now been eliminated after we were told so many times that one of the driving reasons for this development was it was so important that we have an urgent medical care facility of this type in the East Downtown. But my point is that these minor changes are just window dressing. None of these address the central problem. Now, the height of the North Tower has actually increased, and the South Tower is still taller than the Imperial Plaza. There is still no underground parking. The alleyway is still inadequate to carry the increased traffic, especially when you look at the alley plan, there is no parking provided for delivery vehicles. So somehow all the deliveries for this 250,000 foot building are going to be delivered by vehicles that have no place to park in the alleyway. And the total square footage of the project has increased. Thus, the central problem that the height and the mass of the project are inconsistent with Blueprint Boise and the old Boise East Side Master Plan remain. Finally, it was suggested at the last meeting that the project was just the first instance of a naturally evolving and expanding downtown core. I sincerely hope that's not the case, but whether or not that happens is entirely in your hands. This is a human-made change, and there's nothing natural or evolutionary about this requested rezone. To the contrary, when ICCU purchased the property, it knew it was buying land zoned ORD. The price it paid reflected the value of that property accordingly. It could have purchased property 40 feet to the west, but it chose not to. It chose to buy in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Next up is, now next on the list was Braun Roberts, but last we checked you weren't here. I just want to check one more time.
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Then we'll have Jeremy Gray and David Nevin.
Hi, I'm trying to get
We hear
connected
you.
here. Sorry.
You're good. We can hear you.
Okay, I won't worry about the video then. Hi, Mayor McLean and City Council members. My name is Jeremy Gray. I live in the Jefferson. And please, when I'm done, if you could just let my wife, Braun Roberts, continue with her presentation. We're on the same device here.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you. I object to this proposed plan for 4th and Bannock. Boise has a currently approved zoning rule. Follow them or replace them. Don't just ignore them. BVA and City Council claim that the blueprint for Boise is outdated, yet they are the approved rules governing zoning decisions. The focus should be on consistent implementation of the rules, not overriding them for the whims of the powerful few. If they are out of date, finish the already defined process of rewriting the blueprint for Boise. Meanwhile, refuse this request for a rezone. BVA states that they have met the City Council's requested changes from the first hearing, yet they did nothing to reduce the impact of the neighborhood. Basically, the shade of the lipstick was changed, but in my opinion, it remains the same old pig. This project would fit nicely between 6th and 17th, State and Front, or the connector corridor. This is effectively an enlarged Zions Bank building, dropped into a low to medium height, quiet and peaceful residential tree-lined neighborhood. This project will negatively impact traffic, parking, pedestrians, bicyclists, noise and lighting pollution for a quiet, safe, and desirable neighborhood. Just the level of light pollution from five floors of 24-hour parking will ruin the pleasant Boise summer evenings, let alone the noise pollution of the increased traffic. My wife and I and others invested our money and our lives to enjoy living and working in Boise's East downtown. Decisions were based on the existing rules, which were made to preserve this valuable community. Please do not ignore us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And yes, yes, welcome.
And I see that we have a note here, which I can understand, that you cannot start your video because the host has disabled it. I don't think you wanted to see Jeremy and me, which I'm perfectly, I'm perfectly okay with. Okay.
Especially me.
Oh, there you are. We can see you now.
Okay.
Hi there.
Hi. Excuse me. pressing another Zoom button here. I'm Bron Roberts, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and members of the City Council. I really feel blessed that I've lived in East Downtown for the last 11 and a half years. A place with character and charm, nestled between the hustle and bustle of the core of downtown and the Capitol Mall area. Having a four-legged pup in my family means that my husband and I do a lot of walking in our neighborhood several times a day, enjoying the distinct characteristics of the neighborhood. Walking among the mature tree-lined streets with a variety of freestanding residential buildings from the 1870s through the 1960s, all with ample setback as well as grassy curbside easement strips, which is in sharp contrast to the downtown core area. Currently, it feels very park-like and peaceful walking through the neighborhood. This is a neighborhood worth keeping. To me, it was very disappointing that in the previous public meetings related to this project, including the neighborhood meetings as well as the planning and zoning meeting last year and the city council meeting early in January, BVA nor the city staff or city council made little, if any, reference to what should be the guiding light for decision-making on this project. That is Blueprint Boise, which was adopted in 2011. The old Boise East Side Master Plan, which is referred to in East Blueprint Boise, is the specific neighborhood plan for the neighborhood that includes the property of the proposed BVA project. Blueprint Boise, including the old Boise Eastern Master Plan, which I will refer to going forward as the comprehensive plan, should be the guide for the city council to make zoning decisions. The comprehensive plan contemplates mixed-use development on a much lower scale than the proposed BVA project. The proposed 199-foot BVA building is much taller than any other building in the neighborhood, not matching the existing scale and character of this transition neighborhood. The comprehensive plan indicates that the preferred land use for the property is development with a residential emphasis. Only 21% of BVA's proposed project is residential, with the bulk of the project being commercial business. BVA is requesting a rezone rather than going through the process to amend the comprehensive plan. The city council is not authorized to ignore these planning documents or to make up new plans and goals for future development in the context of a rezone application. Approving this project would change the existing character of the neighborhood. The floodgates would be opened with other developers requesting similar projects and thus permanently destroying the character of the neighborhood. Please deny the rezone. Thank you for your consideration.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, it sounds like Councilmember Halliburton has something. Don't say goodbye yet.
Oh, just real quick. I wanted to say thank you for both of your testimony, thought you put into it, and then also for turning on your video. It really is nice when people turn on their video, and it makes it a lot easier for us, I think, to listen really intently and thoughtfully. So thank you for the time you put into it.
Oh, I thought you didn't want to hear us or see us.
If you don't want to see me, that's normal.
Nice to see you as well.
We love seeing folks when you call in. So thanks for turning that camera on. And thank you, Councilman. David Nevin, you're up. Have a good night, Jeremy and Bron.
Thank you. Good night. Well, we're still here, but.
Okay.
Oh, excellent. Great. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. And I had asked Ms. Accord to put this slide up, and I see she's really done it. Appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm David Nevin, and I'm partners with Dennis Benjamin, who was right before Mr. Gray and Ms. Roberts testified. And Dennis and I and our partner Scott McKay own that building right there with the red roof in the foreground of this picture. So I will just say that speaking for myself, I have watched this process with astonishment. And I don't claim to be an expert in city planning and and I haven't tracked these kinds of things carefully the way many of the other speakers have. But I would have thought that this picture, and I understand this picture is provided by the developers. I would have thought that one look at this picture and that you guys would have said, wait, this isn't right. And you just look at the way those buildings loom over our the building that we own there, that building that's been there for 100 years plus. That's a building we've spent a fair amount of money trying to retain the original character of it. That project is utterly out of scale with this neighborhood and certainly with our historic building. And I will tell you, if this thing gets built, it might be a year, it might be 5 years, it might be 7 years, but that nice little red tile roof building right down there won't be there after a while. Now, and in part, it's because the things that people do in a building like that, they don't want to do with a huge behemoth looming over them 20 feet to the west. And that's just human nature. That's going to go away. That's going to change the character of this neighborhood forever. And, I saw the thing in the chat about the Downtown Boise Neighborhood Association, and I understood they represented residents and businesses. We're a business, so I guess technically we're a law firm, a business, but it feels like a place we live. We spend so much time there. I can tell you they never spoke to us. And I think many of the other people on this presentation tonight have said the same thing. And just look around as well. Not a single neighbor, at least not that I've heard, and I believe this is my fourth hearing about this, not a single neighbor supports this project. And it violates the spirit and the letter of the planning documents. But the vibe I get is that you guys are good with it, or good with it with a few minor changes. And that's like I circle back to the beginning 3 minutes ago. I'm astonished by it. I don't see how you can, I just don't see how you can approve a project like this without significantly changing the scale and the intention and putting this utterly unexceptional building right in the middle of this neighborhood. I've gone over. Thank you for not stopping me, and thank you for listening. I very much appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, before David goes off.
Yep, Councilman Halliburton.
Yeah, thank you. David, thank you. So you're obviously right next to the building. You're the tiny little red roof that sticks out in that picture very vividly.
Yeah.
Since our last meeting, I know that the developer offered a couple of times to meet. It sounds like one of them had some technical issues. My question for you is if you participated in one or either of those, and what recommendations, advice, changes did you ask for them in those meetings if you did?
Yeah, I didn't, but one of my partners did. And my understanding is that what happened at that meeting is that the developer said, here are the changes we've made. And it was not what you would call an interactive process. But I also think it's clear that that the developers understanding of the situation is that something very much like this is going to be done. This part of the building that looms over us got bigger since the last time we were here, and the other one got slightly shorter, but really only slightly, in fairness. And the whole project is I understand in aggregate is even bigger. So our sense is that a project of this size is at least twice as big as it ought to be in order to fit in with the neighborhood. And that kind of discussion is clearly a non-starter with the developers. So I would not say it was a really a true interactive kind of process. Councilman. Thank you for the question, though.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks, David, for joining us. Good to see you.
you same here.
Next up, Gabby Thomason, and then Susan DeSeelhorst.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Gabby. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Madam Mayor, City Council members, thank you for your time tonight. My name is Gabby Thomason, and I am testifying on behalf of Preservation Idaho. You have heard much testimony regarding this application and have a recommendation for denial for rezoning from your own City Department of Planning and Zoning, and originally from city staff as well. Here are our three major concerns that we believe support that denial. Number one, it's an inappropriate rezone request. If this building is not currently in the correct zone for its proposed size, that does not mean the existing nearby commercial zone should be expanded because it is so close. If that was so, and that logic is acceptable to the city, then we would like to immediately make an application to expand several of the local historic districts by another block. The city is currently conducting a major rezoning project, including how zoning melds with the current Blueprint Boise and comprehensive plan. To rezone such a major project ahead of those recommendations is to diminish the goals of the project and perhaps to permanently undermine the long-term city planning that is needed to keep Boise the most livable city it can be. Number two, the inappropriate scale and fit for the neighborhood. The current zoning does not allow for this size building exactly because it does not fit with the neighborhood's existing mass and density. If that is to change, it shouldn't be because the rezoning project recommends it, not because BVA has a plan and funding for that project today. Density and size increases should be incremental and at least done as a strategic part of the larger rezoning plan. In spite of the changes requested by the city, BVA has not really made any accommodations. The building footprint changed direction, resulting in an overall larger footprint than originally planned. And while height was diminished in one tower, it was increased in the other. There was no net improvement to the city. And number three, the inappropriate design and obsolescence. In an era where more companies are focusing on remote work, the building of a large garage with commercial office space is a concept out of time for the present. BVA will always have funding and projects they want to do. What's wrong with making them wait another year or two until the major work of the city is done before approving such a monumentally large project that is out of keeping with the current neighborhood design and intent and may never really be needed or appropriate? Boise City Council is supposed to lead the city not only in its vision for the future, but in the protection of both current and future citizens and their quality of life. What would be wrong with making BVA and ICCU wait for the rezoning project to be completed and post-pandemic work and lifestyles to be reestablished before allowing this huge, permanently city-altering project to proceed? The city and its citizens stand to lose more than we will gain from moving too quickly. Developers develop, they will always be here to create and implement projects. We ask that you deny this application tonight. They can build this building or some variation on it once Boise and Boise City Council have all the input needed to make a long-term best outcome decision on behalf of your constituents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gabby. Good to see you.
You as well.
And Susan, are you with us?
I am. Okay,
Well,
I'm going to try and do something here that I'm not good at. All right. I don't think it's going to work.
It worked. We can see something. We can see your screen.
Can you see the map of the stability area?
No.
No. All right. That's not what I wanted to do. Anyhow, let's see if we can do it this way. See what photos end up here. Well, I'll just tell you what I'm trying to explain. So in Blueprint Boise, they have a map that discusses the areas of stability versus the area of significant new development and all of that.
Yeah.
And this location is smack dab in the area of stability. So it's obvious that it was never considered to be something to have a building of this scale dropped in the middle of it. And I agree with everything that everybody's been saying. It's been great to hear some of these comments. They pretty much covered everything I had to say. So I won't take up any more time, but I just think that it was never intended to be in a neighborhood like this, because we are a neighborhood, and you wouldn't drop it in the North End. You wouldn't drop it on Warm Springs. So I don't know why we're any different. We're all in the areas of stability.
Thank you, Susan. All right, next up is Tim Mitchell. Hi, Tim.
Okay, hello. Quick sound check. Are we good?
You're good.
Thank you for having me. Hello and good evening, Madam Mayor and Boise City Council. Just a quick sidebar. I know we've talked a lot about DB&A tonight, but I do echo the comments made by those earlier that the DBA is not representative of the neighborhood association or organization. And as a point of order, I did post to the Zoom comments that in their own words, they exist to serve downtown residents and the business community. But that's a conversation for another day. I'm speaking tonight to urge your denial of the ICCU BVA rezone request. There are several good reasons why you should deny this request based on a range of inappropriate factors, regardless of whether the project has the right setbacks, proper drive-through circulation, height, number of trees, or overall look and feel from the street. The inappropriateness of rezoning this existing neighborhood needs to be top of mind. Your decision should be a straight up denial based on the rezoning issue alone. I want to call your attention to what I think are the two show-stopping reasons to deny. First off, City Planning and Development Services staff state in their packet to you on page 5 that, and I quote, "With the submitted revisions, the planning team recommends approval of the proposed C5 zone with the inclusion of a development agreement, as it would be consistent with the long-term vision for the area," end quote. This is just an amazing statement that must be challenged because nothing about this proposed development has been consistent. While the proposal continues to morph into new, desperate iterations, there are also various and inconsistent interpretations of just what is the vision for East Downtown, which planning documents guide that vision, and most importantly, our planning and zoning, city council, staff, and the design review process really all working together with the same guidelines and assumptions about their respective roles and review processes. This confusion was obvious at your January 5th public hearing and was evident in the wide range of suggestions that council provided back to the developer. And I think we can hear that confusion persists still this evening. This is not consistency, it's inconsistency. And you have the power as city leaders to put a stop to it. Secondly, your Boise Zoning Code Rewrite Advisory Committee has already started to develop new citywide zoning guidelines. Just think for a moment what it would be like to be an advisory committee member right now and to learn that council has approved such a radical spot rezoning request like this one. Wouldn't that be demotivating and distracting? Wouldn't such action demonstrate that the advisory committee's work really doesn't matter because the council would rather conduct rezoning on its own? Approving this project now would certainly hinder their work and would add more layers of confusion and inconsistency. Until the Boise Zoning Code rewrite is completed and approved, major rezoning requests like this anywhere in the city are premature and should not be considered. Make your decision-making life easier. Give the advisory committee a chance to advise you. I urge you to take action tonight with your straight-up denial of the ICCU BVA rezoning proposal. Please keep the public's best interest in mind and not just the developer's interests. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have Krista Broderick and then Rob Tiedemann.
Thank you. Again, sound check. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hi, we can see
Great.
you and hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like to specifically comment on two issues. The landscape plan that was submitted by BVA, and also the transition from the East Downtown neighborhood to the East End neighborhoods and the other neighborhoods surrounding the area. First of all, I was really glad to see that BVA did kind of hear our pleas and actually incorporated some tree protection notes in the plan. Now, there was a total of 10 points that they mentioned, but a landscape plan is not a tree protection plan. So as Brian Jorgensen mentioned earlier, I'd really encourage, though, that the city council do require a detailed landscape plan. I think it should be a complete plan, one that has thorough, specific construction guidelines, a defined management process where the owners are actually involved in that. That's including Jennifer and Dennis and others. And it's not only that, but they're trees, but all of Boise has a investment in our beautiful tree canopy. So it's worth being well managed. And I think that if any of those trees are touched, they should be touched only by an arborist. And I would recommend, because of our city forestry practices, that it be a third-party arborist. In addition, I'd like to kind of highlight, because there's not very many people here tonight to testify about the transition from the East Downtown neighborhood to the East End neighborhood. And that's probably because after the St. Luke's debacle, where trees were just mowed down, almost 60 to 90 of them, and as much involvement as the neighborhood had with that development, a lot of distrust, of course, resulted in that. And so you don't see a lot of people really wanting to devote a lot of time to projects where their input is not really being heard. Already we have suffered from the closure of Bannock, the potential closure of Jefferson, and now more impact on Bannock, which is the main east-west bicycling and pedestrian corridor between the two neighborhoods. I bike that a lot, and a lot of people in our neighborhood walk out of the neighborhood into downtown, into the other surrounding areas. And this is just going to impact that more. The more and more we see this, it becomes just so much more difficult to get out of the neighborhood. And, you know, we pay some of the highest taxes in the entire city, not to mention the state. A lot of our taxes exceed our mortgages. So this transitional neighborhood to the east downtown is really critical, and so is Bannock. And as well, we really value the trees. And I think it's something that the City of Trees should focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. Hi, Rob, you're up. Welcome.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Rob Tiedemann. My address is part of the public record. I'm impressed by your commitment to our agricultural heritage and the protection of the Spalding Ranch. Thank you for promoting this project, which contributes to its neighborhood and our community. And I appreciate your direction to the developer of the project before you now to redesign portions of greatest concern to you and to present those changes at a neighborhood meeting. Like other champions of Boise's downtown, I smile with great hope and expectation whenever I see a construction crane rise in the skyline. Our history shows us that a vibrant downtown is an essential ingredient to a special city like Boise, a spacious culture of people, distinctive places, and a diversity of public experiences are the qualities of a desirable downtown and a feature of smart growth, which seeks to develop a compact city to avoid sprawl. Appropriate placement, compatibility, and good design are all essential to our accomplishing a desired redevelopment of downtown. The proposed project does not meet this test. I agree with your conclusion that Boise needs to plan for a future growth at greater density, but I'm loath to accept the idea that the city would sacrifice one of its goals, preserving the history, heritage, and character of our neighborhoods and downtown, for another, greater density, when there is a third way. Encourage that density west of downtown, where there are numerous empty lots occupied with surface parking. We know that this project at this location will result in the unintended loss of surrounding historic homes and architecturally significant buildings, and that a structure of this kind, familiar to us who travel the I-84 corridor from Boise to Meridian, will not contribute to the neighborhood's historic nature. We know that a city that is authentic and honors icons of its history attracts redevelopment money because people are charmed by what is distinctive and unordinary. And we know it is good public policy, not just to house people, but to provide them shelter in a manner that contributes to community. Please know, I appreciate your determination to make Boise one of the most livable cities in the country. I believe a decision to require the developer to remain within the requirements of existing zoning will contribute to your goal of creating a vibrant community with lasting environments and innovative enterprises. And I request that you deny this appeal to the decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission. If you choose to do otherwise, I ask, what will you do to mitigate the decline, the depreciation, and the eventual loss of our historic heritage that remains between downtown and the St. Luke's Hospital complex? Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Rob. Good to see you. Hi, Justin. You're up next.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Great. Hi, my name's Justin Snyder. Madam Mayor, members of the council, first off, thank you for your work to keep our city a beautiful and welcoming place to live and work. I am the owner of Le Soleil, the French immersion daycare and preschool at 302 West Idaho Street, which is one door down from the proposed office tower. I must say I'm concerned for the viability of my school, in large part due to concerns I have about our student safety if this rezone is approved. Rezone and approval of a large office tower almost next door will increase noise and traffic to the tune of 7,000 trips a day, apparently, directly impacting the quality of service we're able to provide to our infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. While I was researching and planning in the years leading up to Le Soleil's opening, I had very specific needs for our location to work. We needed to be in a residential feeling zone, but close to downtown so that we can take students on our daily walks to nearby parks for outside playtime and to learning opportunities like the zoo, the Capitol, Discovery Center, all of which are vital parts of our curriculum. Our location on 3rd and Idaho was very intentionally chosen because of the zoning and because of the historic neighborhood feel of the surrounding blocks, and because the long-term planning in the old Boise East Side plan for the area specifically emphasizes residential use on the block and appropriately scaled development. Had I imagined most of our block turning into a massive office tower, I would never have signed my nearly decade-long lease. I hope that you can understand my confusion as to how a 200-foot office tower that takes up 2/3 of the block is appropriately scaled to our single-story childcare facility and other single-story buildings next door. I do understand that some design concessions have been made on the part of BVA, but none of them have brought the project into scale with the neighborhood or into agreement with the planning documents that apply to our block. The office tower would necessarily intensify the use of our alleyway by large delivery and trash vehicles throughout the day, meaning the safety of children and families as they drop off and pick up in our legally required loading zone in that alley would be impacted. The catch-22 is that the use of this loading zone would be even more necessary to us since the short-term street parking used by most families right now would be taken up by the vastly increased number of vehicle trips to our block to meet the office tower demand throughout the day. In our conditional use permit hearings, the main concern of everyone involved was rightly the safety of our students and ensuring that there are not conflicts between traffic and families dropping off their young children. I just don't see how this rezone would be in keeping with those same concerns. And I hope for the sake of our students and our neighborhood that you deny the request to rezone most of our tranquil block and to allow this enormous office tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. It was good to see you.
You too.
And we have one more on the list who signed up in advance, and then we'll go to the raised hands. Linda Anderson.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. Mayor McLean and members of the City Council. My name is Linda Anderson. I have owned and lived in a unit at the Jefferson for 6 years. My late husband and I bought our condo with the expectation that because of the zoning, this neighborhood would remain low-key and far less commercial than the central downtown core. This latest redesign is just as massive as the last version, and in my opinion, just as out of scale with this quiet neighborhood. When you look at the before and after photos in your packet, there is hardly any difference. I am very disappointed that despite your direction, BVA did not increase at all the north setback facing Bannock Street. I hope you will deny this project, but if you don't, I have some suggestions. As the project now stands, all of the south-facing units at the Jefferson would be confronted by a massive structure almost on the property line with 5 levels of noisy, unsightly parking open 24/7 and brightly lit at night. BVA says they will screen it, but we all know that a commercial parking garage is by its very nature quite unattractive and virtually impossible to disguise. BVA says they won't underground the parking because they want the option to retrofit later. However, they are investing no money into making these 5 levels able to accommodate live rather than dead loads as required by code. And the parking levels are 10 feet tall rather than the 14 feet for the office levels. No matter how much public transportation supplants the auto, there will always be a need for parking. I would propose a compromise. If you did approve this project, if you required 2 levels of the parking to be underground, this would lower the height of the building and give at least some relief to the neighborhood and to the residents of the Jefferson, who will have this garage as their main view. And because the Jefferson directly across the street has 4 levels of parking well above the water table, it can be assured that pumping would not be necessary. If you decline to deny this project, I fervently urge you to require a substantial setback on all sides of the building to maintain at least some compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood and to require at least 2 levels of underground parking and to reduce the overall scale and mass of this building. Thank you very much. I appreciate being able to testify.
Thank you, Linda.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Halliburton. Linda, don't leave us yet.
Linda, I just want to make sure that I heard you right.
I'm here. I'm here.
Did you say that you had 3 recommendations and it was the 2 levels of parking under the garage or underground, larger setbacks? And I didn't know if there was a third one beyond just reducing scale.
The third was just to reduce, to reduce the mass. The mass of this building is actually larger than it was before they redesigned. So to reduce the height and just the entire mass to make it more consistent with this neighborhood, which is quite a reduction. It would take quite a reduction.
Thank you, Linda. I always appreciate it when
does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate it when people share what their desire is, and then also if this, then here are some other things. So thank you for bringing those ideas to the table as well.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Linda. Good to see you. All right, now the clerk will start calling people that have raised their hand.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, we currently have 2 individuals, Eric Nystrom and Patrick Spouts.
Great, Eric. Welcome. Are you there, Eric? Eric, it says you're talking and I can hear a little bit of noise, but I can't really hear you. We do see some slides.
Well, Madam Mayor, can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you, Eric. Good to hear you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, esteemed council members. My name is Eric Nystrom. I live in 200 North 3rd Street, Suite 203. I'm the board president of the Imperial Plaza Condominium Association. Like many residents of the Imperial Plaza, I've come to treasure the inviting grass parkways and tree-lined streets of our cozy East Downtown neighborhood. To date, the vast majority of the local neighbors, businesses, and residents near the 204th Street location have raised their concerns and opposition to the proposed zoning change. We believe the existing zoning code and guidelines should be followed, as this is the code of record. Tonight, I come before you to submit that this is not simply a potential change to the local area around the 200 North 4th Street to benefit the applicant. This proposed zoning change will irrevocably change the character of this historic neighborhood. Yet even of greater significance, this proposed change in zoning will radically impact the skyline of Boise forever. Earlier, I had submitted a rendering of the impacted Boise skyline, and unfortunately, due to technology, that's not available. As viewed from the Boise Depot, the compact core of the downtown is one of the most beautiful aspects of our cozy city. If you were able to see this image, and I submitted this in my letter via email, the core of Boise's downtown and the eastern edge of the straddling the Capitol Boulevard. If you continue to view west, the core of the downtown Boise is most prominent. When you look to the locations of the applicant's building, the zoning change that would be allowed would be very different than the core of the downtown. I expect the applicant may point out the rendering that I had submitted is not to scale. And I actually asked the BVA to create their own rendering of the downtown skyline with their building during their ill-fated Zoom neighborhood meeting, and I received no response. Secondly, the image that I provided provides a perspective on what is at stake here at Boise. We agree the commission with Commissioner Milt Gillespie when on November 2nd, he stated, "This is a fairly big deal," end quote. The scale and footprint of this building is wrong for the neighborhood. Our request to the City Council is to vote no on this rezoning change request. Thank you. Please save our neighborhood and our city skyline.
Thanks, Eric.
Madam Mayor, I've got another question.
Sure, Eric, if you're still here, Councilman.
I am, yes.
Okay, great. Councilman Halliburton has a question.
Yes, Councilman.
So Eric, in the last meeting, one of the things that I brought up when asked what was potentially an applicable height was that the Imperial Plaza had perhaps set a precedent at its own height. And so I guess my question for you is if the height of both buildings, the North and the South Tower, were no taller than the Imperial Plaza, would you still be opposed to the rezone?
That's a great question, Councilman. I believe that would be certainly more acceptable than what is currently proposed. As others have noted tonight, the redesign that the applicant has proposed is actually of greater mass than what it was originally proposed. So I would ask that you keep that in your consideration. And again, we would request you to deny the rezone application.
Thanks, Eric.
I hope I answered your question. I hope I answered your question, Councilman.
Yeah, Eric, that I appreciate that. It sounds like you made it clear that you would be more in favor of it, but the mass of the building itself is part of the issue as well, and that the increase of mass, and so that you would still be opposed, but that would make it better. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. That's a good assertion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Eric. And there's one more.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, two more. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Madam Mayor, our next speaker is Patrick Spouts.
Oh, hi, Patrick. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I live at 912 West Brumbach, Boise, Idaho, and I'm excited to call in and testify in support of this project. Our city has a housing crisis, and I am excited at the prospect of more than 100 units and more than 100 family units having the opportunity to live in such a walkable, nice, wonderful part that everyone's talked about how great it is, close to downtown. Within a 4-block radius of here, some of Idaho's tallest buildings. It's not like far from downtown, it's adjacent and transitioning from where to where. I'm excited about adding a lot of housing, and I think we need to approve this because, as we've talked about earlier today, if we're going to do smart growth, we're going to grow up. Near downtown is the place for that. I also want to just mention that someone mentioned how people on the Citizens Advisory Committee might feel about City Council making these kind of changes while we're deliberating. I am a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I absolutely endorse the city continuing to function and to serve the needs of its citizens while we engage in probably a 2+ year process to figure out what our long-term vision is going to be. I don't think it'd be appropriate to put all other business on hold while we wait for the outcome of this process where I'm a eager and active participant. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Any questions? Nope. All right. Good to see you. Good night.
Madam Mayor, our next speaker is Sheila Grisham.
I think I heard that it's Sheila Grisham. Yes? Sheila, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Sheila Grisham. I live at 1204 East State Street, Boise 83712. Tonight, I am speaking on behalf of the Easton Neighborhood Association. ENA is opposed to the ICCU BVA project at 200 North 4th Street because of the impact that it will have to the neighbors close by. The size and scale of the project is not congruent with the surrounding areas, and the two most critical issues, the C5 rezone and the city breaking away from the East Boise Historic Master Plan. This new build will have very little affordable housing, which is what the City Council has been asking for. So this project will do very little to relieve the affordable housing crisis that Boise is currently facing. This project is for the sole purpose of making money. We are concerned with what is going to happen to the rest of the section of downtown Boise. How is City Council going to prevent more requests for C5 rezones? How do we know at this point with COVID that we even need more office space? We have at least one partially empty building downtown already. What will happen with that one? The taller building should stay towards the city center. Otherwise, we could end up with taller buildings and C5 zoning from 4th Street all the way to Broadway Avenue. Is this really what Boise is looking for? Should council approve this project, you will have absolutely no recourse when other builders come forward with other projects. City Council should be following the East Boise Historic Master Plan. And if you're not going to follow the plan, then council needs to go through the process to change the plan. If this is the case, then the plan should be changed first before an approval of this application is considered. We understand that Boise is growing and changing, that we need more housing, that this is progression. However, this project is not a good fit for this particular area. We believe that BVA can come up with a better plan. They have already made a few good changes, but we believe they can do even better. So far, I have felt this process has been very disheartening. Council and Planning and Zoning have had dozens of citizens show up to testify in opposition to this project. The last hearing, there was one person that testified in favor of the project. These are your constituents, and it feels like you're not listening to us, but solely to the builder. Please take our concerns to heart. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheila.
Madam Mayor, I don't see anyone else.
All right. Right now, there's nobody else to sign up, so I'm gonna just double check because there's nope. All right, just want to make sure. Now, before we take closing comments, I'm just going to see if staff have questions, or not staff, if council members have questions for staff or other things you'd like to be sure are covered. Is that the order we normally do?
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Celine. So a couple of questions. We heard a lot of testimony tonight about the tree lawn character of this neighborhood. My read of the plan is that the developer intends to continue to have a tree lawn around this. Am I reading that correctly?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that is correct. There will be a landscape strip with street trees and then detached sidewalks and then their property.
Okay. The other thing we've heard a lot tonight and was also addressed, I think, at the last hearing was setbacks. As I'm looking at setbacks around the Jefferson, for instance, there's only about 3 or 4 feet between the back of sidewalk and the edge of that building. So there's the tree lawn, the sidewalk, and a small landscape area. That's the measurement I get anyway on Google Earth, maybe up to 5 feet. As I'm reading the plans for this, the North Tower does have that kind of setback, but the South Tower does not, other than the corner where the entrance is. Again, am I reading that correctly?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that is correct. The North Tower does have a little bit more modulation with those patios. And then the South Tower has the entrance for the bank, and the service commercial on the other side of the entrance of the garage is set back a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Last question, a lot of conversation both evenings about undergrounding the parking versus adding 5 stories so that you could have the parking. Wondered what the conversations, if any, from the developer about that were with staff.
Councilmember Clegg, there have been no discussions. The applicant is online and can address it in the rebuttal or to you directly, but I don't believe that was a path that they chose.
Okay, I just wondered if there were any discussions about that at all. And then finally, I did, if I'm counting those stories correctly, on the North Tower, the setback is at 6 stories, not 7. And maybe the developer can clarify that as well.
Councilmember Clegg, the rooftop patio for the multifamily is on the 7th story. So the living space is 6 stories tall.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
I said to not quote me on my counting.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I've got questions for staff. I just want to make sure that it's appropriate to ask them now, or if we wanted to let the developer go first, or if other staff had questions.
Let's have Jeff go ahead with his rebuttal, and then we'll take everything else in one fell swoop.
Cool.
Go ahead. Welcome back.
Madam Mayor, members of council, can you see my notes, my PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes.
I have Mr. Turnbull and Mr. Alquist here with me tonight as well to answer any questions you may have. There's been a lot of discussion, and I'm gonna focus on just a couple things. We did take your counsel seriously. We took your direction, and we used that as the basis for the modifications that we made to the project, and with your guidance and direction, went back and had 2 neighborhood meetings and a variety of other meetings with individuals. What I think is lost in this is we did listen. We did listen to you. We listened to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think there was a general recognition amongst all the policymakers and decision makers that height in the urban setting is appropriate. Let's take a moment and again consider the relevant plans. And I don't disagree with the analysis that Mr. Parks provided. I disagree with how he applies it. Blueprint Boise designates this site as part of the downtown planning area. Within the downtown planning area, it designates this property, everything west of 3rd, as downtown mixed use. That is a significantly more intensive mixed use designation than the general mixed use to the east, and that provides the buffer around downtown. To address the question that Ms. Snelton raised, there is guidance in Blueprint Boise for what the differences are. Within the general mixed use, it contemplates the types of floor area ratios that we've talked about of lower rise buildings, but could be higher in other settings. And as in your own comp plan, it indicates that within the general mixed use, upwards of floor area ratios of 2. In the downtown mixed use, however, it indicates significantly higher floor area ratios. Typical floor area ratios will be between 2 and 10, although higher intensities will be supported within the downtown core. Now, much has been made about this project getting larger. And why did this building get larger? It's because we added 18 additional residential units to the project. We reduced 3 floors of office space and we reallocated office space to retail. So the retail area is actually larger than what was the original medical use on that corner. More importantly, when we talk about this, it talks about in the downtown mixed use that we are truly going to have a mixture of uses, intensive uses. Now, the downtown Boise, Old Boise East End master plan is important. We do not deny that. But it's also important to note that since adopting it, the city has not coordinated and codified the zoning ordinance to implement provisions that Mr. Parks would argue are mandatory. He's elevating the East End Boise master plan to a zoning ordinance and ignoring the fact that that document itself, and I recognize it's important, identified this site as a location for urban residential development and identified this site as a potential parking garage site. So why are we here before you? Well, I think it's important to note that very little of the comments that you heard tonight were about the modifications that we made to the application to address the concerns that you had raised in January. We think it's important to note that you've heard no criticism whatsoever of the elements that we've done. It's the argument that the project is too tall, too massive, too. That's the same argument you heard in January. And it doesn't go to the merits and it doesn't go to the issues of how do we tie the East End Boise master plan and Blueprint Boise together. The reality is, why are we here? We are here because ICCU has owned this property for some time, has operated a bank on it with a surface parking lot. It brought together individuals and entities that it knew could do the type of joint venture that would address what is contemplated as a downtown urban mixed use development. They brought in Brighton because Brighton knows and understands this type of multifamily development. They brought in BVA because BVA knows and understands how do you do complex mixed use projects. A 13-story office building is not a high rise. In reality, it's a mid-rise building. It's a mid-rise building in any other market. We have taken significant time and effort to integrate uses that we know there is a demand for in this community. We know there's a demand because Mr. Alquist and BVA have developed these types of medical office buildings. We also recognize that there is a need for downtown housing, and that's what was contemplated. We think this is an appropriate and compelling mixed-use project. We heard your concerns. We have addressed them. We request your approval tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Jeff, I'll ask you the same question I asked staff. Did you ever contemplate underground parking? And if so, why did you choose not to do that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, we have had that discussion repeatedly, haven't necessarily had it with staff. There are reasons that we set forth of why we're not undergrounding or in our materials, but there are several reasons. It is not an apples to apples comparison that residential parking underneath the Jefferson would be comparable to commercial property and commercial parking at this size. The concerns that have been raised about the amount of parking is important. And there is not a single underground parking garage in this community that would meet what people have said is appropriate with this parking garage to underground all of it. More importantly, if you underground this garage, there is enhanced impact on the neighborhood. Many of those in the community who may be concerned about St. Luke's now don't remember 20 years ago when St. Luke's dug out their parking garage and took tens of thousands of trips of fill down Warm Springs Boulevard with respect to that project. So you're going to have a much more impactful development process. You're going to have larger trucks. You're going to have more trucks. It's going to have a greater environmental impact. And most importantly, Councilmember Clegg, when we talk about undergrounding parking, there are two additional facts. Your ramps are different, which will materially affect your ground floor retail and the ability to do it. We would lose more space on the ground floor for these pedestrian type uses if we went to an underground garage, and it would be significantly more impactful on the trees that are adjoining the property. The second thing, though, is that within the C5, I would point out that the city, and we talked about this at the last hearing, your C5 ordinance contemplates a density bonus if parking is underground of 4-to-1. And you did that in recognition of the fact that there are economic consequences. And that density bonus it's mandatory. The language is shall, that if you build underground, the density bonus shall be 4-to-1. So why did you do that? You did that because there's a recognition of a different economic impact. We're not building this garage and have not sought any support from CCDC. There aren't public funds that are going to support this garage like some of the other underground garages that have been built in downtown Boise. So, Councilmember Clegg, we think it's the better approach. We think that you can retrofit it above ground. If everything that everybody has said tonight about technological change is true, you can utilize that space. We don't need more underground parking. We don't need more underground storage in the future. And it's not usable for things like residential use. So those can be retrofitted, those can be addressed. That's part of the reason that we've come up with a plan that has flat floors for parking.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff before we close the public hearing?
Madam Mayor, I guess I've got a question for Jeff. I was gonna I may need some staff help as well. So Jeff, you had a slide, I think it was slide 37, where you were talking about the land use map and what downtown mixed use is intended for. And I guess my question maybe for staff is the downtown mixed use intended for this type of intensity of a building, this mass of a building and scale of a building? So I guess the first question would be to staff, and then I've got a follow-up for Jeff.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the downtown mixed use is certainly for this kind of intensity, for building up, for building compact, for focusing on pedestrian environments, for hiding vehicles, for focusing on, that downtown urban core feeling. Mm-hmm. And that this site is designated for that downtown mixed use.
Wonderful, thank you. And then Jeff, when you were referring to the slide, you were actually referred to an exact or a few exact numbers. And I think I missed what those numbers were.
So Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, the references that I was making was from chapter 3 of the downtown Blueprint Boise with the general design guidelines. And in the mixed use zone, which is the area east of 3rd, it contemplates floor area ratios of 0.5 to 2. And it contemplates the possibility of somewhat higher than that. Within the downtown mixed use zone, however, the language says that typical FARs, floor area ratios, will generally be between 2 and 10, although higher intensities will be supported within the downtown core. This project, based upon staff's calculation of the floor area ratio, is a floor area ratio of 9. And so we think it's within the density range that was contemplated. It doesn't push the envelope that you might have if we were more central to the downtown core. It is what you contemplated in Blueprint Boise with with the standards and guidance that was adopted therein.
Jeff, thank you for that specific clarification. That's all the questions I have for applicant.
Thank you. Anyone else for the applicant? All right, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing.
And Madam Mayor, maybe I missed it, but I did have questions for staff.
Oh yeah, you can ask them now.
Yeah, if no one else does.
Yep.
So the questions I have are really about the old Boise East Side master plan. And so that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was implemented in 2004. Certainly, you know, a lot has changed since 2004. I think that you could buy a house in the North End for about $200,000 at that point. So I don't know that we were having the affordable housing crisis that we have now, and nor maybe could we have predicted it. And then I think I have an understanding that maybe it's not an expiration, but there's another term referred to of it ending in 2025 or needing reevaluation in 2025. Is the date 2025 associated with that plan whatsoever?
Councilmember Halliburton, the district itself sunsets for its tax revenue finances in 2025.
All right, yeah, so maybe that's where I'm getting that number. So I guess my question is, you know, what do we do when we have a master plan that is potentially dated or something has changed and it may no longer either fit, or it may, when it was created, the things that happened could not have been predicted. Do we typically just refer back to Blueprint Boise, or if that plan is still in the books, do we stick with that plan until another plan is made?
Councilmember Halliburton, it is a complicated effort, I suppose. You know, this plan is still in effect, and we can certainly take elements from it. But as you noted before, our world has definitely changed since the inception of this plan. Blueprint Boise is a more current version of our vision for this area, but this plan still stands. And until a new plan or a new specific neighborhood plan for this specific area is adopted, we have to take bits and pieces and just kind of evaluate, you know, with these types of hearings, how we want to move forward as plans are aging.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, another question.
Sure.
So this building is not located in a historic district, is that correct?
That's correct.
But it's bordered by two historic districts, both the East End, or the old East End, and the old Boise, is that correct?
That's correct. You can see on this slide there's 5, I suppose, historic districts in this slide, but the East Main and the Old Boise are relatively close.
So with Old Boise being in the historic district, is it safe to say that we will not see high-rise 199 feet construction in that area?
Councilmember Halliburton, I apologize, I don't know those historic districts by heart, but I believe it's safe to say that those historic districts for Boise did not contemplate a 200-story or 200-foot building.
So potentially there may always be a gap between an older, lower side of town, the intense downtown that we have right now, and this potential new building and the Imperial Plaza?
Councilmember Halliburton, I believe that would be a correct assessment.
Okay. And then Madam Mayor, I guess maybe one more question for now.
Mm-hmm.
So going through this application and many of the recommendations that council already asked and the applicant put forward does make it more compatible with Blueprint Boise, retaining alleyways, promoting alternative forms of transportation. You can go through the book in the downtown area and see all sorts of boxes checked. The one that I'm maybe struggling with a little bit is on DT 22, and it's basically the addition of new buildings. And it says, design new infill buildings in historic areas so they respect the scale and massing of the historic buildings, and they make appropriate transitions if new buildings are at a higher density. And so with that specific point, I guess an area that I'm struggling is that intended to only be for buildings that are in historic districts or buildings that are impacting historic districts, surrounding historic districts?
Councilmember Halliburton, I don't believe that that goal or principle is written as clearly as you would hope. This site is not in a historic district, and so it is not encumbered by those, regulations. But there's certainly, justification or at least some reasoning behind having a transition between the historic districts and adjacent development.
So there's some interpretation that could be made with that particular one.
Certainly.
All right, thank you. Madam Mayor, that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Saline. Madam Mayor, sorry.
Of course, go ahead. You're good.
Thank you. Saline, a lot of testimony tonight contemplated that if this were approved, it would mean that all of the East Downtown neighborhood would somehow be at risk of this kind of development. As I'm reading these plans, there's little left west of 3rd Street that has historic buildings on it that would potentially be up for redevelopment, recognizing that the Imperial Plaza got built over 50 years ago and nothing in this neighborhood has been built of that scale since. I guess from a planner perspective, what protections are in place to stop what people believe would happen, which is a wholesale change in the neighborhood if this one building is approved?
Councilmember Clegg, I think that's a multi-answered question. I think there's, just referring to the slides, there's the land use map for the designation of the available zones that we would foresee in these areas. But then with the current zoning, if that C5, that intense unlimited use is not in place, any site that is not zoned C5 would have to go through this exact same process if we had not, zoned anything C5 at that point. The other part to that question, though, is for historic buildings. If there is a historic building that's been registered or landmarked, there are different implications for that, more so in the historic district, but we certainly, as planning staff, look at those contributing structures and realize that that would be a loss to the overall neighborhood. But if they're not protected by a historic district, there's not much we can do about that either. I mean, we can certainly take it into consideration, just like we did for this site, but they're not protected by our historic districts.
Follow up if I could. While they're not in an historic district, they're also, many of them are also individually registered, if I'm not mistaken. And while that does not provide the same level of protection, what level of protection does it provide?
Without being in the historic district, I guess it's just the recognition that these are historic contributing structures to the area if they were in a historic district. Right now, we don't prohibit that from demolition, and if someone was to go through a rezone, it would be before you all, just like it is this evening.
Okay, thank you. One more question, if I might, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
The screening, if we were to go ahead with this, the screening of the parking garage on the south side, on the west side, on the north side, excuse me, on the west southern portion of the building, there's a green wall along the edge of the parking garage. And I probably should have asked this question when the developer was still available. Did you ever have any discussion with the developer, especially now that it's set back, of doing a similar treatment on the north side of the parking garage to screen it to screen the Jefferson from it?
Councilmember Clegg, we did not have that conversation.
Is that a conversation that could happen at design review?
Most certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I was taking some notes. All right.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
this
Go ahead.
is very difficult and very challenging, but I'm going to make a motion to approve CAR 20-0007. This is with respect to the rezone, and then we can deal with the appeal later if we get to it. And this, for clarity, this is a motion to approve CAR 20-7, subject to the conditions of a design review agreement that substantially reflects the revised proposal that we received in connection with this hearing.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Mhm.
The most difficult thing about this for me is integrating to the best we can the East Side plans with Blueprint Boise's guidance on the downtown plans. On the one hand, there is guidance in the old Boise East Side master plan that strongly suggests that the authors of that planning document weren't thinking about this kind of development. On the other hand, this site is designated downtown mixed use in Blueprint Boise. I think, to be candid, there's not a way to make them fit perfectly, and that's why this is so difficult. People on both sides have very good arguments to make, and I feel very stuck in the middle. A couple of things that were particularly pertinent to me are that the old Boise East Side master plan is not code. That if this site were across the street, we wouldn't be having these types of discussions, at least not in this pointed way. And that the city's tallest buildings are all within a few blocks in either direction. And so when we talk about transition and fit, that is pertinent to me. I don't think that this is incredibly clear-cut and incredibly easy. I think everybody here is going to have to, if they vote in favor of the motion or if they vote against it, exercise a lot of judgment and a lot of discretion. And they're going to have to interpret these guiding policy documents heavily because they just don't point to what the answer is. I agree with some of the testimony that we received that it's astounding that this could happen. And it is. I agree with other testimony indicating that this is something we desperately need, and it is. But ultimately, what has to drive our decision is the best good faith integration of these policy documents that we can make. And so for me, the status of the old Boise East Side Master Plan as a guiding document and the status of Blueprint Boise and its land use designations as a guiding document, and the location of this site right there, immediately adjacent to somewhere where it wouldn't be anywhere near the issue it is now, tip me to believe that we should approve this.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I won't be supporting the motion that's on the table, and it's for a few reasons. One of those reasons is that while we do desperately need more housing, we also have a lot of housing coming online downtown in the coming months that it wasn't there before. And to me, a lot of the housing argument is overshadowed by the fact that a majority of this development is office space. Whether or not we need that much office space in the East End is, I think, really unclear. And so while I think that housing is really important, I think that most of this development and a significant part of the mass of this development is something that we haven't said is a priority for our city, and that the East Side Master Plan specifically calls out that this is envisioned as a residential neighborhood. So until we have another master plan that says otherwise, and we've re-envisioned this area as something else, I think that needs to be respected. The other issue that I'm still having with this development is the overall massing. Really, you're turning this block into one big building with 2 towers and essentially creating a super block. I understand that you still have some traffic flow underneath the building, but you still have one very large building, where in other areas of downtown, specifically this area, you still have alley access. And I heard a lot of comparison to the Imperial Plaza. The Imperial Plaza has a very small footprint. So while it's tall, it was built in a time when the footprint was also very small. So you don't end up with the overall massing combined with the height, really making a building that's out of character, completely out of character with the area. So I won't be supporting the motion tonight for those reasons. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Madam Mayor, I seconded the motion because in general, I agree with Councilmember Bajan and the arguments he made. This is very difficult. There are good arguments on both sides of it. I believe that while you can argue that the mass is out of scale, you can also argue that it's in keeping with the what was envisioned in Blueprint Boise. While you can argue that we may or may not need office space, that's really not the decision before us. What's before us is whether or not this building meets our policies and our codes to the extent that we can make a judgment one way or the other. I would ask the maker of the motion, if I'm going to support the motion at the end of the day, if he would be willing to make some additional conditions on the developer. First, and probably not surprisingly, is in addition to the design review guidelines that are contemplated based on the revised design we got, to ensure that the tree mitigation is fully developed before approval is granted. That includes review by an arborist to ensure that the protection measures taken will in fact protect the trees that are going to be preserved. The second is to require the developer to allow no less than 5 vouchers and to encourage the acceptance of up to 10. If we had 10 vouchers, that would be 10% of the units. And I think it would, for me, go a long way toward making this a better housing project. And then finally, to incorporate a condition on the design review process that would require additional mitigation on the north-facing side of the garage to ensure that light pollution does not unduly impact the Jefferson.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I don't have any concerns with those three conditions, and I'm happy to include them in the motion.
Great, so they're now
Thank you.
included in the motion. Will the seconder who proposed these
Yes.
changes also agree to them?
Yes, I
I
do.
just want to make sure for the record, were we able to, I jotted them down, but were we able to grab them? Okay, great. All right, we're good.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
like Councilmember Woodings, I also won't be supporting the motion. I think this is an extremely tough decision, and there's, I guess, in the spirit of one of the folks who offered testimony, but also offered ideas and input and solutions, I'm going to try to do that as well. The reason I'm not supporting it is I think that one of our goals with Blueprint Boise, any other planning document, and in any rezoning, is to give people a predictable development pattern. And I don't know that approving this project right now without a plan that really explicitly, shows that this is the appropriate type of development for this area of town, that we are giving people a predictable development pattern. Now that may change when we do a zoning rewrite in the future and when we re-examine the master plan for this area. But at this point, that's just something that I can't get around. When we had our original meeting, the developer asked, what some of the conditions that people would like to see. And they've incorporated a lot of those conditions, and I really appreciate those. There were a couple council members who gave some specifications for height. Mine was 135 to 160, I think. A couple council members were okay with something that was a little bit higher. And they came back kind of in the middle, but towards that higher range. I was looking for something that was about the same height, if not shorter, because of the mass of the total development than the Imperial Plaza. And I think that would be more predictable, for our residents when looking at this areas and looking at the transitions from place to place. That's my biggest reason why. I don't have a huge issue with the total mass, with the density. I think that we need more of that in this area. My biggest issue is that we're not giving people a predictable development pattern. And I can look at areas in our Blueprint Boise, in addition to the old Boise East Side master plan, that spelled that out relatively clearly. I would approve a rezone to C5 with a design review if it was a shorter building. I don't think that I'm going to get the maker of the motion to put that forward at this time. So I'm not opposed to the rezone. I am opposed to this particular one with what we're listing in the conditions.
Other comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Well, after listening to all of the input from our citizens and the debate, the input from the project developer, I certainly had, and like everyone here probably share some of the concerns that exist with the project. Maybe not concerns, more so questions. And I believe that some of this, as Councilmember Bajan noted, it warrants some interpretation on our part. And the conditions that were added to the motion by Council President Clegg gave me additional comfort in moving forward with this rezone. I have some concerns with the date of the old Boise plan and how it may conflict with Boise's comprehensive plan. And I believe that's where some interpretation on our part comes into play, and where the meeting of the intent of our current code and our blueprint really comes into play. I believe that design review can really assist in some of the concerns that will exist in the overall design of this project. And I just think that at the end of the day, while I do have concerns or questions still about the intent, interpretation, I do believe that this is an appropriate rezone for this particular project at the time. So I will be supporting the motion.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to thank Councilman Bajent for being the first penguin off the ice floe. I know it's not easy, so thank you for doing that, Councilman. You know, the reason we're working on our zoning code is for this very reason. Our future and our past are running right into each other. And this is so difficult because the people who testified tonight were all over the board. There wasn't one consistent reason. And I didn't hear the one that I was expecting, which was, you're blocking my view, which is one we would normally hear for something like this. But you know, I'm remembering when Justin Snyder came before us to get approval for his daycare, for his preschool, and it was traffic. That was something that the neighbors brought up. You know, the increased traffic, the safety of the children, and so it was fascinating to listen to somebody who's been here before, who worked really hard to get his business set up, and with that assurance. And so you know, that weighs heavy on my heart. Listening to Gabby Thomason talking about, you know, we're in the process of getting things up to date, and can we wait till we get to that point where things are a bit more clear, you know, because we can't unbake a cake. That's a big cake in downtown, that part of downtown. You know, and I think about, you know, conversations I had earlier today and talking about, you know, we have families who've been houseless for years, a couple hundred, and we make them wait for housing. And I really appreciate what Councilmember Woodings brought up in terms of what we're needing in our community, and we are needing housing. And I think about, I don't know if it was Mr. Parks who said, you know, you should have gotten more out of this deal. And I agree. I don't know that it's possible to get more, but I did hear him. I thought everybody who testified tonight made so many compelling points. But I also think about the restaurant across the street. I mean, I'm the daughter of a restaurant owner. My mom would have been so happy to have customers across the street. So that was compelling too, to have somebody who would probably have a lot of people eating at the restaurant, and they still said, no, thank you. So I will not be supporting the motion tonight for all those reasons.
Well, by my count, I think I'll be breaking yet another tie. So I'm just going to jump in here with a couple things. I really appreciate everybody's testimony tonight. Those of you that came in person, and of course, those of you that joined us online. You know, I was not here for the last hearing, but I want to also be clear that I read the record and looked at the conversation that council members had at the end and the requests that were made of staff and of the developer. And for me, this is, I mean, many of you on council have said things that I agree with. Many of you in the public have said things I agree with. We're in a transition period. And we heard from someone who's on our zoning rewrite committee who agrees that we can't stop. And the reason we're rewriting our zoning is because of these push points right now. And as our city grows and changes, we need housing. We do have a lot of housing coming on. We do not have enough housing. It's been very clear that we need more housing. And anything that we can do to ensure that we have housing both in our downtown core and throughout our neighborhoods in a built environment and style that's reflective of our past, but also the future of where we're headed is so incredibly important. And, you know, I appreciate the conditions that were made that Council President added to this. And I am going to vote for the motion because of those conditions made and because our staff recommended that with the changes that the developer made in response to the council's previous requests and in working with their staff, they've recommended approval of this. And so I'm going to look to them, particularly in this one, and our need for housing, my appreciation that there will be some affordable. Yes, we'd like more. I'm going to really push on the BVA look at, as the council president asked, getting upwards towards 10. And piece by piece, we're trying to tick off the availability of housing in our community.
Madam Mayor, if I could really quick.
Sure.
Just to a point that you made and you know, an effort that our council president put in earlier, you know, we've got 5% listed on there currently. Councilmember Clegg has asked it to consider going up to 10. I guess one point I just might add is that, you know, this is still, you know, the money's money, like the money's real, you get it no matter what. And I don't know that there necessarily is any reason why, you know, 10 should even be a top limit. You know, if we're going to be taking vouchers for something, and if we're going to be getting, if the developer is still going to be getting paid the exact same amount of money, I think it's great to set a minimum. I also don't think that there's any reason that we should have a maximum as well. And I would encourage any developers to look at this as actually an asset, as stable tenants who have a stable check coming in and a little bit of extra work that goes into it. And so just to that point, if we're fighting for affordable housing, keeping that maximum, I think wide open would be wonderful.
All right, clerk, you can call the roll.
Halliburton,
No.
Sanchez,
No.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
No.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
3 in favor, 3 opposed. Mayor, please break the tie.
Yes.
That makes it 4 in favor, 3 opposed. That motion passes.
Madam Mayor, in light of all of that, I would move that we grant the appeal in CUP 20-23 on the ground that the decision was not supported by substantial evidence because the evidence that the Planning and Zoning Commission considered changed with this redesign. And so it's not that the Planning and Zoning Commission did anything wrong, but the evidence has changed and their decision is no longer based on substantial evidence.
Second.
We have a motion, a second.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just want to note that while I did not support the rezone, I think that the reasoning on this exception is sound, and I will be voting in favor.
Go ahead.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. If there's nothing further to come before the council,
Motion to adjourn, Madam Mayor.
Second.
please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good night, everybody. We're adjourned.